Hi, I'm Sophia, a 28-year-old new mom, learning to handle the wonderful but tough world of motherhood. The first few days at home with my newborn son were a mix of happiness and exhaustion, even though he brought so much joy into our lives. Recovering from childbirth was harder than I thought. The house was always messy, with laundry piling up and dishes not getting cleaned. One afternoon, as I was trying to calm my crying baby, the doorbell rang. It was Linda, my mother-in-law, dropping by without warning. She looked around the cluttered living room, her face showing both worry and a bit of disapproval. "I thought I'd check in and see how you're doing, dear," Linda said, stepping over a baby toy. "Tom mentioned you might need some help." "Thanks, Linda. Things are a bit crazy, but we're managing," I said, trying to hide the stress in my voice. Linda walked into the kitchen, and the sound of dirty dishes seemed louder than ever. "It looks like you need more than just a little help," she said sharply. "This place is a mess. Is this how you plan to raise my grandson?" Her words hurt, and I felt even more overwhelmed. "I'm doing the best I can," I replied, holding my son closer. Linda let out a long sigh. "Sophia, being a mom is about setting priorities, and right now, it looks like you're not prioritizing anything." I was about to say something when Tom, my husband, walked in. Seeing the tension, he quickly tried to calm things down. "Mom, Sophia is doing a great job. It's been hard since the baby hasn't been sleeping well." But instead of calming down, Linda turned to Tom. "You need to help her understand what's important. It's not just about cleaning, it's about being responsible. She's not meeting the family's expectations." Tom looked at me, then back at his mom, unsure what to do. "Mom, please, can we not do this right now? Sophia is still recovering." "But this is the time to teach her," Linda said, raising her voice. "If she learns now, she'll handle things better later. You can't go easy on her, Tom." Tom hesitated, then said, "Maybe you're right, Mom. Maybe Sophia does need to learn the hard way." The words sounded strange as he said them. "Exactly," Linda agreed, gently pushing Tom toward me. "Show her that this kind of behavior isn't okay." I barely had time to react before Tom's hand hit my cheek. The sound echoed in the room, marking a terrible line that had been crossed. I held our son close, his cries blending with the rapid beating of my heart. "Tom, what are you doing?" I managed to say through my tears. The pain from the slap was nothing compared to the feeling of betrayal. "This is for your own good, Sophia. You need to learn," Tom said, his voice empty, avoiding my gaze. The room went quiet except for my baby's soft whimpers. Tom looked at me with a mix of frustration and embarrassment, while Linda stood firm, her expression unreadable but unyielding. What started as a casual visit had turned into a harsh critique of my parenting and my worth. As Linda prepared to leave, she whispered something to Tom at the door. I couldn't hear it all, but her tone and Tom's worried look told me it wasn't supportive. That night, as I rocked my son to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. What should have felt like a supportive family now felt like a trial, and I was the one on trial. As I cared for my son and felt the sting on my cheek, I started to think clearly amid the chaos. I needed a plan, a way out, not just for my safety, but for my little boy's well-being. The house that had once felt like home now felt like a trap set by the very people who were supposed to love us. After Tom slapped me, influenced by Linda, I couldn't stand the thought of sleeping next to him. I took my baby and went to the nursery, which had been a safe space for the past few weeks. As I rocked my son back to sleep, the day's events replayed in my mind, sharpening the pain and betrayal. The next morning, while Tom was at work and Linda was presumably busy, I made a call. Jessica answered on the second ring. "Jess, it's me. I need the help you offered," I said, my voice trembling but determined. "Say no more, Sophia. I'll come by today with my truck. We can store your things at my place until you decide what to do," Jessica replied, her voice strong and reassuring. The plan was simple, but risky. I would pack as much as I could during the day, focusing on what my son and I really needed. Jessica was going to help me move everything to her place in the evening. We decided it was best to leave before Tom came home from work, knowing he might try to sway me with apologies or that Linda's influence might take over again. As I packed, every outfit and baby toy felt heavy with memories and what-ifs, but the memory of Tom's slap and the look in Linda's eyes reminded me that staying was not an option. By late afternoon, most of our things were boxed up and hidden in the garage. Jessica arrived just as the sun began to set, her presence a light of hope on one of the darkest days of my life. "Ready?" she asked, taking in the scene of our life reduced to boxes and bags. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, holding my son a bit tighter. We worked quickly, loading the truck with the speed and teamwork of a well-oiled machine. The nursery, my safe space, was the last room I cleared. I took a moment there to say a silent goodbye to the life I had hoped to build with Tham. As we drove away from the house, I watched it fade in the rearview mirror, a chapter closing with a heavy but hopeful heart. My baby slept quietly in his seat, unaware of the change, but finally safe. This was the first night of our new life, one where fear and manipulation would no longer have power. At Jessica's place, my resolve grew stronger. The peace and support I found there were a sharp contrast to the tense atmosphere of my own home. In this safe space, I began to plan how to expose Tham and Linda for who they really were. My goal was not just to escape, but to ensure they couldn't twist the story to their advantage or hurt anyone else. I started by reaching out to family and friends under the pretense of catching up. I quietly recorded any mentions of Linda's behavior and Tham's unusual obedience to her. Some family members were cautious, but many didn't realize how much control Linda had. Over the weeks, these pieces of evidence started to create a clearer picture. I collected text messages, voicemails, and recorded calls. I even got a damaging video of Linda coaching Tham on how to handle me, showing it was more about control than concern. With everything in place, I chose the location for the confrontation, a family gathering at Tham's sister's anniversary party. It was a neutral place with enough family members present, some of whom had privately expressed their discomfort with Linda's control. On the day of the gathering, I was extremely nervous. I arrived with Jessica, who agreed to support me. The greetings were polite but lacking warmth. The tension about Tham and Linda's recent issues was felt by even the most distant relatives. After the initial small talk, I stood up, my hands shaking but my voice steady. "I have something important to share with all of you today," I began. Every eye in the room turned toward me. "It's about Tham and his mother, Linda, and how their actions have affected me, my son, and the whole family." Tham looked shocked and scared. "Sophia, let's not do this here." He tried to interrupt, but I pressed on, pulling out my phone. "This isn't just a family issue," I said, connecting my phone to the Bluetooth speaker. The room went quiet as the recordings played, Linda's harsh orders and Tham's hesitant agreements about correcting my behavior. The reactions ranged from shock to disgust. Tham's aunt, who had always liked me, looked especially betrayed. "Is this true, Linda? Were you forcing Tham to do these things?" Linda's face turned to a mask of anger and panic. "These are just taken out of context." She tried to deflect, but then Tham's cousin, who had been quiet until now, stood up. "No, they aren't. We've seen signs of this for years. We just didn't want to believe it." The confrontation changed everything. Relatives began sharing their own experiences, slowly revealing how Linda had manipulated the family under the guise of concern. Tham sat there, pale and silent, finally realizing the web his mother had spun around him. As the family meeting turned into a heated discussion about Linda's control, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. The truth was out, and not just for me. Everyone who had been affected by Linda's toxic influence could now see it. The evening ended with promises of support for me and my son, and a clear message to Linda that her control was no longer welcome. After the confrontation, everyone was left with a quiet, somber realization. Tham's family, long under Linda's sway, now saw her manipulations for what they were. The shock was clear, and everyone felt uncomfortable as they came to terms with how deeply Linda's influence had affected their lives. For me, the decision to leave Tham was painful but necessary. As the family gathering came to an end, the finality of my choice became real. I gathered my son, who was blissfully unaware of the turmoil, and with one last look at the family home, I stepped into the unknown. Tham watched us go, sorrow and resignation in his eyes. His voice, once so familiar, seemed distant as he whispered a quiet goodbye. Linda, on the other hand, faced a much harsher reality. The family she had controlled for so long now turned their backs on her. Each member felt betrayed and had to face the trust they had misplaced. Linda was blamed for tearing the family apart, and her attempts to regain control were ignored. The evidence and the testimonies shared at the gathering were too powerful to dismiss. In the weeks that followed, Tham tried to reach out. His messages were a mix of apologies, pleas for forgiveness, and promises to change, but the memory of him raising his hand against me was too strong to forget. The echo of Tham's mother's influence in his actions created barriers too big to overcome. The trust was broken, and with it, the foundation of our marriage. I found refuge in a small apartment, far from the neighborhood I once called home, a place where no one knew my story. Jessica remained my rock, helping me through this new phase of life. My days became focused on simple routines, caring for my son and rebuilding a safe world away from the shadows of the past. Healing was slow and often painful. Some days, the weight of everything felt too much to bear, but the freedom to make choices without fear of manipulation or abuse pushed me forward. I went to therapy, joined support groups for single mothers, and slowly, the broken pieces of my old self came together into someone stronger and more resilient. My son's laughter became my anchor. Each milestone he reached was a bright moment, guiding me forward. As he grew, so did my confidence in the future, one that I was now shaping on my own terms. Months passed, and one evening, as I put my son to bed in our cozy apartment filled with drawings and toys, I reflected on the journey. The pain of the past was still there, but it was overshadowed by the light of new beginnings. The support of friends and my son's unconditional love had created a safety net that caught me on difficult days. Sitting down with a cup of tea, I finally felt ready to share my story. I started a blog, a place to talk about my experiences and connect with others who might be dealing with manipulation or abuse. With each post, I stepped further away from being a victim and closer to becoming an advocate. As our story of resilience comes to a close, I want to leave you with a question. Do you think it's possible to fully break free from manipulative family dynamics, or do the shadows of those relationships follow us forever? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content on real-life issues. Your engagement helps us bring more stories like this to light. Thank you for watching, and let's keep the conversation going.
3 months ago, I died in a tragic hiking accident at Cascade Falls. At least, that's what my sister Diana told everyone. The reality was far more complicated and much darker. I watched a local news report from a motel room 50 miles outside of Seattle, my coffee growing cold as the anchor solemnly described my fatal fall. Sarah Mitchell, 32, was reported missing after failing to return from a solo hiking trip, the anchor read. After an extensive 3-day search, authorities discovered signs of a tragic accident near the upper falls. While no body has been recovered, experts believe survival would have been impossible given the conditions. The camera cut to Diana, her perfect face streaked with artfully applied tears. "She was my best friend," she sobbed. "My only sister. I can't believe she's gone." I turned off the TV, my hands shaking with anger. Best friend. Right? That would be why she'd taken out a $5 million life insurance policy on me 2 months before my accident. The truth was, I hadn't been anywhere near Cascade Falls that day. I'd been in my Seattle apartment, preparing for a business trip to Phoenix, when I got the call that changed everything. "Ms. Mitchell." The voice had been professional, cautious. "This is Agent Cooper with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Do you have a moment to discuss your sister, Diana Mitchell?" That call had saved my life, because Agent Cooper had evidence that Diana had been planning my death for months. Bank records showing massive debt. A newly purchased life insurance policy with herself as sole beneficiary. Suspicious internet searches about untraceable poisons and accidents that look natural. "We believe your sister may be planning to harm you," Agent Cooper had said. "We need your help to catch her before she succeeds." And so began my death. A carefully orchestrated disappearance, staged to look exactly like what Diana had been planning. The FBI had helped me vanish, leaving just enough evidence at Cascade Falls to make my accident convincing. For 3 months, I'd watched from the shadows as Diana played her role perfectly. The grieving sister, devastated by loss, but bravely carrying on. She'd even started a foundation in my name, though I had no doubt where that money was really going. Now, sitting in my motel room with case files spread across the bed, I was finally ready to come back to life. The insurance company deposited the funds this morning, Agent Cooper confirmed over the phone. $5 million, straight into her account. We have the transfer records. And the foundation donations, Already traced to offshore accounts. Your sister's been busy. I picked up a photo taken just yesterday. Diana at a luxury car dealership, writing a check for a new Mercedes. Grieving in style. The funeral's tomorrow, I said. Everything ready? Teams are in position. Just remember to wait for my signal before you make your entrance. I smiled, thinking of Diana's face when she saw me. Oh, don't worry. I want this to be perfect. Perfect, like Diana had always been. Perfect grades, perfect hair, perfect life. While I was the awkward one, the plain one, the one who had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. Our parents' death 5 years ago had only widened the gap. Diana had gotten the lion's share of the inheritance naturally. The golden child. I'd gotten just enough to start my own business. A small tech consulting firm that had finally started to become successful. Too successful, apparently. Diana had borrowed heavily against her inheritance, making risky investments that didn't pay off. By the time she took out the life insurance policy on me, she was nearly bankrupt. I'd never seen it coming. That's what hurt the most. Even knowing how shallow she was, how self-centered, I'd never imagined she'd try to kill her own sister for money. A knock at my motel room door made me jump. Agent Cooper stood outside, a garment bag over her arm. Thought you might want to dress appropriately for your own funeral, she said, hanging the bag on the door. Inside was a sleek black dress, elegant but understated. Perfect for a ghost returning to haunt her killer. The wires built into the neckline, Cooper explained. Completely invisible, but it'll pick up everything. And the cameras. She handed me a pair of designer sunglasses. Built in. Everything will be recorded from your perspective. I tried them on, studying my reflection. With my dark hair pulled back severely and dramatic makeup, I'd barely recognized myself. Good. The less I looked like the old Sarah, the more dramatic the reveal would be. Your sister hired someone to help stage the accident, Cooper said, watching me prepare. A local guide who was supposed to verify seeing you on the trail that day. He rolled over on her as soon as we showed him the evidence. His testimony alone would convict her. But that's not enough, is it? I turned from the mirror. You want her to confess. On camera, wearing a wire, with 50 witnesses. Cooper nodded. No wiggle room. No legal gray areas. Just pure, incontrovertible proof of premeditated fraud and attempted murder. I thought of all the times Diana had overshadowed me, dismissed me, treated me like an afterthought in her perfect life. Tomorrow, she'd learn just how big a mistake she'd made in underestimating me. Get some sleep, Cooper advised. Tomorrow's going to be intense. But sleep was impossible. I spent the night reviewing the evidence, making sure every detail was perfect. Bank statements showing the money trail. Emails between Diana and the guide discussing the accident. The life insurance policy, taken out with forged signatures and backdated documents. Most damning of all were the text messages we'd recovered from Diana's cloud backup. Messages to her boyfriend, Marcus, laying out the whole plan. Sarah's finally worth more dead than alive, she'd written. Once the insurance pays out, we'll have everything we ever wanted. Marcus, to his credit, had been horrified. He'd broken up with her immediately and gone straight to the FBI. His statement was part of the evidence package. Dawn found me still awake, watching the sun rise over the Seattle skyline. In 6 hours, I'd be attending my own funeral. In 7, my sister's life would implode. The church was one of those grand old buildings in the historic district, all Gothic spires and stained glass. Diana had chosen it for maximum dramatic effect, No doubt. The parking lot was already full when we arrived. She'd invited hundreds of people to witness her performance. "Remember," Cooper said as we parked a block away, "wait for my signal. We need her to incriminate herself before you make your entrance." I nodded, adjusting my sunglasses. Through the tiny camera, I could see the funeral guests arriving in their somber best. Many were crying. Diana had clearly sold my death well. "There she is," Cooper pointed. Diana emerged from a black limousine, stunning in designer mourning wear. Her blonde hair was artfully tousled, her makeup perfect despite the tears. She clutched Marcus's mother's arm as if she could barely walk from grief. Marcus himself was conspicuously absent. He'd refused to participate in this farce. "Audio check," a voice said in my hidden earpiece. "Testing. 1, 2. I spoke softly. "Receiving." "Cameras online," another voice confirmed. "All units in position." This was really happening. After 3 months of hiding, of watching my sister profit from my death, I was about to turn her world upside down. "You okay?" Cooper asked, noting my expression. I thought about Diana's text messages planning my murder, about the fake grief, the stolen money, the sheer calculated cruelty of it all. "I'm perfect," I said. "Let's go haunt my sister." The funeral service was exactly as grandiose as I'd expected from Diana. White lilies covered every surface, my supposed favorite flower, though she'd never bothered to learn that I actually preferred sunflowers. A massive portrait of me dominated the altar, clearly photoshopped to match Diana's preferred image of her sister. "Guest count is over 300, Agent Cooper murmured in my earpiece as we watched from our hidden position in the church's side entrance. "Your sister really went all out." "Of course she did," I whispered back. "She's playing the role of a lifetime." Through my camera-equipped sunglasses, I recorded everything. The greeting faces, many of whom I barely recognized. The expensive flower arrangements with cards proclaiming in loving memory. The donation box for the fraudulent foundation Diana had started in my name. "Target approaching microphone," another agent reported. "Showtime." Diana glided to the podium like an actress taking center stage. Her black channel dress probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. The insurance money was clearly already being put to use. "My beloved sister," she began, her voice trembling perfectly. "My Sarah. My best friend." I had to admire her performance. The slight catch in her voice, the elegant dab at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. It was masterful. "Sarah was more than just my sister," Diana continued. "She was my rock, my conscience, my greatest supporter." Through my earpiece, I heard Agent Cooper snort softly. We'd both read the text messages where Diana had called me a useless burden and plotted my death. When she went missing that day, Diana's voice broke beautifully. I knew something was wrong. Sarah was so careful, so responsible. She would never have taken risks on that trail. Actually, I was an experienced hiker who tackled much harder trails than Cascade Falls. But Diana had never bothered to learn that about me either. "The foundation we've started in her name," she went on, "will help other families dealing with similar tragedies. Already, your generous donations have made such a difference." "Money transfer confirmed," an FBI analyst reported in my earpiece. "Another 100,000 moved offshore this morning." I smiled coldly. Diana hadn't wasted any time laundering the foundation money through her network of shell companies. "I just wish," Diana dabbed her eyes again, "I just wish I'd been able to say goodbye, to tell her how much I loved her. Target is moving to phase 2, Cooper murmured. Get ready. Right on cue, Diana's voice strengthened with false resolve. But Sarah wouldn't want us to dwell in sadness. She'd want us to celebrate her life. That's why, in her memory, I'm announcing a new initiative. She went on to describe an elaborate charitable program that would never exist. More ways to collect donations, more schemes to steal money in my name. We've got it all, Cooper confirmed. The foundation fraud, the insurance scam, everything. Time for phase 3. I watched as one of our undercover agents approached the podium, handed Diana a note. Her performance didn't slip for a second as she read it. Oh, she said softly into the microphone. I've just been informed that they may have found something at the falls. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was the moment Diana had planned carefully, a dramatic announcement that would cement the story of my death and eliminate any lingering questions. The search teams, her voice shook, they've discovered evidence, personal items that confirm. She pressed the handkerchief to her mouth. That confirmed my beloved sister is truly gone. The congregation erupted in fresh grief. Diana sank gracefully into her seat, accepting comfort from the wealthy socialites she'd invited to witness her performance. All units in position, Cooper said tersely, waiting for the signal. I watched through my camera as Diana leaned close to one of her friends, whispering something that made them both smile slightly, probably already planning how to spend more of my insurance money. The insurance company's fraud department is standing by, another agent reported. They're ready to freeze the accounts on your word. Diana stood again, moving back to the podium. This was it, the final act of her performance. The part where she would give a touching speech about accepting closure and moving forward, about honoring my memory through her foundation. Sarah would be so touched by this outpouring of love, she began. By your generosity, your support. Now, Cooper said firmly, go. I took a deep breath and stepped through the side door. The first person to notice me was an elderly woman in the back row. Her gasp was audible even over Diana's speech. Then another person saw me, and another. The whispers spread like wildfire through the congregation. Diana, caught up in her performance, didn't notice at first. And though we may never fully recover from this loss, she continued. Diana, I said clearly, my voice carrying through the church's perfect acoustics. I think you've recovered just fine. The new Mercedes proves that. She froze. For just a moment, her perfect mask slipped, revealing naked shock and something else, fury. Then she screamed. It wasn't the practiced, elegant cry of her performance. This was raw, primal, real. She staggered back from the podium as I walked slowly up the center aisle. No, she whispered. No, this isn't possible. What's wrong, sister? I asked pleasantly. You look like you've seen a ghost. You're dead, she said. You're dead. I made sure. She cut herself off, but it was too late. The words hung in the air like a confession. You made sure. I repeated, still advancing. Made sure how, exactly? By hiring someone to verify my presence on a trail I never visited. By forging documents? By planning my accident down to the last detail. I don't know what you're talking about. She tried to recover. Sarah, I've been so worried. Where have you been? Cut the act, I said coldly. The FBI has everything. The insurance fraud. The foundation scam. The text messages planning my murder. On cue, Agent Cooper and her team emerged from their positions around the church. Diana's eyes darted between them like a trapped animal. "This is ridiculous," she laughed nervously. "There's clearly been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," I said, reaching the podium, "was you thinking you could get away with this." I turned to face the shocked congregation. My sister took out a $5 million life insurance policy on me 2 months ago. She hired someone to help fake my death. She's been stealing donation money through a fraudulent foundation. And now, I smiled coldly at Diana. Now she's going to face the consequences. "You can't prove anything," she hissed. I tapped my sunglasses. "Actually, I just did. This entire conversation is being recorded, including your little slip about making sure I was dead." The color drained from her face. "Ms. Diana Mitchell," Agent Cooper stepped forward, badge displayed. "You're under arrest for insurance fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder." As Cooper began reading Diana her rights, I surveyed the gathered crowd. The shocked faces, the dawning understanding, the cameras already coming out to record this spectacular moment. Diana had wanted an audience for her performance. Now she had one for her downfall. It was perfect. "Diana Mitchell, how do you plead?" The courtroom was packed 3 months after my funeral. Diana stood at the defendant's table, wearing a carefully chosen pale blue suit that made her look younger, more vulnerable. Her attorney had clearly coached her on appearance. Gone were the designer labels and perfect makeup. This was Diana 2.0, the misunderstood sister. "Not guilty, Your Honor." I sat in the front row, directly in her line of sight. She hadn't looked at me once since being let in. The evidence against her was overwhelming. The FBI had built an airtight case. Bank records, text messages, emails, witness testimony from the guide she'd hired, and most damning of all, the video from my funeral, where she'd accidentally confessed. But Diana had never admitted defeat gracefully. Her defense was creative. I had to give her that. According to her lawyer, she'd been the victim here. She claimed I had orchestrated the whole thing to frame her, that I'd faked my own death to destroy her life and steal her inheritance. The insurance policy, forged by me. The text messages, planted. The offshore accounts, must have been my doing. The prosecution calls Sarah Mitchell to the stand. I walked to the witness box, feeling Diana's eyes finally fix on me with barely concealed hatred. "Ms. Mitchell," the prosecutor began, "please tell us about the events leading up to your alleged death." For the next hour, I laid out the whole story. The FBI's warning, the evidence they'd shown me of Diana's planning, the careful operation to catch her in the act. "And why?" the prosecutor asked. "Did you agree to participate in this sting operation instead of simply confronting your sister?" I looked directly at Diana for the first time, because I couldn't believe it was true. I needed to understand why my own sister would want me dead. "Objection." Diana's lawyer shot up. "Speculation about my client's intentions." "Sustained," the judge ruled. "The jury will disregard that last statement." But I'd seen several jurors' expressions. They'd heard what they needed to hear. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Every day revealed new details of Diana's scheme. The insurance agent testified about the forged policy documents. The hiking guide described how she paid him to lie about seeing me on the trail. Marcus, Diana's ex-boyfriend, detailed the conversations where she planned my accident. Through it all, Diana maintained her innocent act. Tears at appropriate moments. Confused looks when damning evidence was presented. hurt glances at me, as if she couldn't understand why her beloved sister would do this to her. It might have worked, if not for the video. On the final day of testimony, the prosecution played the complete recording from my funeral. The camera in my sunglasses had captured everything in perfect clarity. Diana's performance, her shock at seeing me, and most importantly, her damning words, "You're dead, I made sure." The jury took less than 2 hours to reach a verdict. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. Diana's perfect mask cracked. On the charge of insurance fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Her fingers gripped the table until her knuckles went white. On the charge of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. A small sound escaped her, something between a gasp and a snarl. As the judge prepared to announce sentencing, Diana finally snapped. "You ruined everything," she screamed, turning to face me. "It was perfect. I had it all planned. You were supposed to die, and I was supposed to." "Ms. Mitchell," the judge thundered, "control yourself, or you will be removed." But Diana was beyond control. 20 years of carefully maintained facade crumbled in an instant. "You were nothing," she shrieked as bailiffs moved to restrain her. "Just a burden. A nobody. I deserved that money. I deserved." They dragged her out, her screams echoing through the courthouse. The judge called a brief recess to restore order. Agent Cooper touched my arm. "You okay?" I nodded, watching the door where Diana had disappeared. I finally got my answer. About why she did it. About who she really is. I gathered my things, and who I am. The sentencing, when it came, was severe. 25 years for conspiracy to commit murder. 10 years each for the fraud charges, to be served consecutively. No possibility of parole for at least 30 years. Diana's perfect life was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and microphones. "Ms. Mitchell, how does it feel to send your own sister to prison? Any comment on the foundation money still missing? Will you be writing a book about your experience?" I stopped at the top of the steps, considering my response carefully. "My sister died long before she tried to kill me," I said finally. "I just didn't want to see it. Today isn't about revenge or justice. It's about truth. And sometimes the truth hurts worse than any lie." 6 months later, I stood at Cascade Falls, watching the water thunder down. The place where I was supposed to die had become something of a tourist attraction after the trial. People took selfies, trying to spot where the accident was meant to happen. My tech consulting firm had flourished, ironically enough. The publicity from the trial had brought in new clients, people who appreciated someone who could spot complex fraud schemes. The insurance money had been returned, the foundation dissolved, and Diana's offshore accounts frozen. She'd lost everything: money, freedom, reputation. Her perfect image shattered beyond repair. I'd received a letter from her last week, the first contact since her sentencing. Just 2 lines. "I would have given you half, if you just died like you were supposed to. Think about that while you enjoy your victory." I'd burned the letter without responding. Some relationships couldn't be fixed. Some betrayals went too deep. My phone buzzed, Agent Cooper, checking in as she still did occasionally. "Heard from our mutual friend," she texted. "Just more poison," I replied. You know, most people would be more traumatized by all this. I looked out at the falls, thinking about strength and survival and the strange ways life tests us. "Most people," I texted back, "haven't had to attend their own funeral." A family of hikers passed by, the children pointing excitedly at the waterfall. Their mother held their hands tightly, keeping them safe from the edge. Sisters, I noticed, about the same age difference as Diana and me. Be careful up there, I called out. The view can be deceiving. The mother smiled gratefully, pulling her girls back from the railing. They continued up the trail, their laughter carrying on the wind. I took one last look at the falls before turning away. Diana had chosen this place to end my story. Instead, it had become the beginning of a new one. My phone buzzed again. Work this time. A potential new client, worried about financial irregularities in their family business. I have some experience with that, I told them, walking back to my car. Let me show you what to look for. The sun was setting as I drove away from Cascade Falls, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. In my rearview mirror, the waterfall diminished until it was just a distant roar. Some people spend their whole lives pretending to be something they're not. Diana had pretended to be the perfect sister while plotting my death. I had pretended not to see her true nature until it almost killed me. Now we were both exactly who we were meant to be. She was inmate number 247,891, serving 30 years for trying to kill her sister. And I was alive, successful, free. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just surviving, it's thriving. As I merged onto the highway, a familiar song came on the radio, one Diana and I used to sing as children, back when we were just sisters, before money and jealousy and murder plots complicated everything. I switched it off. Some ghosts are better left unsung.
Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. The signs were there all along, in my mother's tight-lipped disappointment whenever I mentioned my business classes, in my father's lectures about real careers over dinner, in the way they showcased my cousin Michael's medical school acceptance letter in the living room while my business school honors gathered dust in a drawer. But nothing could have prepared me for that spring afternoon when everything fell apart. I remember every detail of that day. The cherry blossoms were in full bloom outside our family home, their delicate pink petals drifting across our perfectly manicured lawn. I had just returned from my college graduation ceremony, my business degree with highest honors still rolled up in my hand. The familiar scent of my mother's famous bulgogi wafted from the kitchen. She always cooked Korean food on important days, a reminder of our heritage and her expectations. Sarah, my father's voice cut through the air like a scalpel. He stood in the doorway of his home office, still wearing his white doctor's coat from the hospital. We need to talk. The office was a shrine to medical achievement. Multiple diplomas and certifications lined the walls, interrupted only by photographs of my father with various dignitaries at medical conferences. A model of the human skeleton stood sentinel in the corner, its empty eye sockets watching our family drama unfold. Your mother and I have been patient, he began, each word measured and precise. We give you 4 years to come to your senses about this business degree. He spat out the words like they tasted bitter. But now it's time to grow up. We've arranged for you to take the MCAT next month. With some intensive studying, you can still apply for medical school this cycle. I gripped my diploma tighter, the paper crinkling under my fingers. Dad, I'm not becoming a doctor. I have a job lined up with Anderson Consulting. They're one of the top healthcare consulting firms in the country. A consultant. My mother appeared in the doorway, her face twisted with disgust. You want to be one of those people who tell real doctors how to do their jobs. I want to help improve healthcare systems, I tried to explain. Make hospitals more efficient, help more patients get better care. Enough. My father slammed his hand on the desk. No daughter of mine will waste her life pushing papers. You're a Kim. Your grandfather was a doctor. I'm a doctor. Your cousin Michael is becoming a doctor. This is our legacy. It's your legacy, Dad, not mine. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's hands trembled as she gripped her apron. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Then perhaps you should find a new family to disappoint. His voice was cold, clinical. If you won't uphold the Kim family tradition, you are no longer welcome in this house. "You can't be serious." But looking at their faces, I knew they were. "Mom?" She turned away, wiping her eyes. "Listen to your father, Sarah. Medicine is everything to this family. Without it, what are we?" "I'm your daughter," I whispered. "Isn't that enough?" My father opened his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. "Here's $100. Take it and leave. When you're ready to apologize and apply to medical school, you can come back." I stared at the envelope, memories flooding my mind. All the times I'd helped organize patient files at their private practice during summer breaks. The nights I'd spent researching healthcare management innovations, dreaming of ways to modernize their outdated systems. The pride in my voice when I told people my parents ran Kim Family Medical Center, one of the most respected private hospitals in the city. None of it mattered. To them, I was just another failed dream. I reached into my wallet and pulled out the $27 I had left from my graduation dinner, placed it on top of the $100 they'd given me. $127. That's my starting capital. Remember this moment because one day you'll regret choosing your legacy over your daughter. My father scoffed. Big words from someone who can't even write a prescription. I turned and walked out of that office, out of that house, leaving behind everything I ever known. In my pocket, my phone buzzed with a message from Anderson Consulting. "Excited to have you join us next month. Your insights into healthcare systems are exactly what we're looking for." They had no idea how personal my mission to transform healthcare had just become. I spent that night in a cheap motel, using precious dollars from my $127 fund. As I lay on the lumpy mattress, staring at the water-stained ceiling, I made myself a promise. I would build something bigger than Kim Family Medical Center. Something that would change not just one hospital, but the entire healthcare system. And when I succeeded, I would make sure my parents remembered exactly why they lost their daughter. The next morning, I walked into a local bank and opened a business account with $100 of my remaining money. The teller looked at me skeptically as I filled out the paperwork, probably wondering what kind of business I could possibly start with such a small amount. "Name of business?" she asked, fingers hovering over her keyboard. I thought for a moment, then smiled. "Phoenix Healthcare Solutions." Phoenix, like the bird that rises from the ashes, exactly like that. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into my role at Anderson Consulting. During the day, I analyzed healthcare systems, identified inefficiencies, and proposed solutions that saved hospitals millions. At night, I built Phoenix Healthcare Solutions, starting with a simple website and business cards I designed myself. My first client came through pure chance. At a coffee shop near Anderson's offices, I overheard two doctors complaining about their struggling private practice. Without thinking, I turned around and introduced myself. "Your problem isn't your medical care," I told them after listening to their issues. "It's your systems. You're losing 30% of your potential revenue through inefficient billing practices and scheduling gaps." They looked skeptical, but desperate enough to listen. I offered to fix their systems for a small fee plus 10% of any revenue increases for the first year. They agreed, probably assuming they had nothing to lose. Within 3 months, their practice's revenue had doubled. Word spread quickly through the medical community. Soon, I was juggling my day job with an increasing number of private clients. My tiny motel room became my office, its walls covered with flowcharts and system analyses. 6 months after being kicked out, I had saved enough to rent a small office space. A year later, Phoenix Healthcare Solutions had 10 employees and was managing systems for 15 medical practices. I never told my clients about my parents or Kim Family Medical Center. In fact, I rarely used my full name, going by Sarah P. for Phoenix in all business dealings, but I kept tabs on my family's hospital through industry news and gossip. They were struggling, though they'd never admit it. The healthcare landscape was changing, becoming more corporate, more efficient. Private hospitals like theirs were being squeezed by larger healthcare groups with better systems and more resources. I could have helped them. I knew exactly how to modernize their operations, how to make them competitive in the new healthcare economy. But they had made their choice, and I was making mine. By my 3rd year, Phoenix Healthcare Solutions had expanded beyond simple consulting. We were buying struggling practices, modernizing them, and either selling them for profit or incorporating them into our growing network. Each acquisition taught me more about the industry, about the complex dance of healthcare politics and economics. I hired the best talent I could find: doctors who understood both medicine and business, tech experts who could build cutting-edge medical systems, lawyers who specialize in healthcare regulations. Together, we were building something revolutionary, a healthcare group that combined medical excellence with business efficiency. The irony wasn't lost on me. In rejecting my parents' dream of becoming a doctor, I had ended up deeper in the medical world than they could have imagined. But I was doing it my way, proving that there was more than one path to improving healthcare. 5 years after being kicked out, Phoenix Healthcare Solutions had become Phoenix Medical Group, a billion-dollar corporation that owned 30 hospitals across the country. We were known for turning around struggling facilities, for introducing innovative systems that improved both patient care and profitability. I had an apartment in the city's most exclusive building, a corner office with a view of the skyline, and more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But I still kept that initial bank receipt for my $100 deposit in my wallet, a reminder of where I started. And then, on a crisp autumn morning, my assistant walked into my office with news that made my heart stop. "Miss Phoenix, Kim Family Medical Center just filed for bankruptcy protection. They're looking for buyers." I picked up the report she brought, my hands steady despite the emotions churning inside me. The numbers told a familiar story: declining revenues, mounting debts, outdated systems. Everything I had warned them about, everything I could have prevented. "Should I add them to the potential acquisitions list?" my assistant asked. I looked out my office window at the city below, at the empire I'd built from $127 and spite. "No," I said finally, "this one's personal. Set up a meeting with their board. It's time for Sarah Kim to come home." What I didn't know then was that my parents' hospital was just the beginning. The real battle, and the real revenge, was still to come. The next morning, as I prepared for the board meeting that would begin my takeover of Kim Family Medical Center, I couldn't help but remember my father's words. Big words from someone who can't even write a prescription. He was right. I couldn't write prescriptions, but I could sign checks that would decide the fate of his beloved hospital, and that was just the start of what I could do. Part 2. The return. The Kim Family Medical Center looked smaller than I remembered. The building that once loomed large in my childhood memories now seemed tired, its once gleaming facade dulled by time and neglect. The state-of-the-art facility sign was faded, its letters peeling, a perfect metaphor for the hospital's current state. I adjusted my Armani suit, a power move that cost more than the $127 I'd left with 5 years ago. My heels clicked against the marble floor of the lobby as I walked toward the boardroom, each step echoing with purpose. The security guard did a double take as I passed. Perhaps he remembered the teenage girl who used to help file papers during summer breaks. "Miss Phoenix?" My assistant, Lisa, appeared at my elbow. "The board is waiting. Your parents are already inside." I paused, checking my reflection in a nearby window. I looked different now, sharper, harder, successful in a way that would have been impossible to imagine 5 years ago. "Have they been told who's coming?" "No. As requested, they only know they're meeting with the CEO of Phoenix Medical Group." I smiled. Perfect. The boardroom was exactly as I remembered. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, and an overwhelming sense of old-world medical tradition. The kind of room where important men made important decisions about other people's lives. Now it would witness something entirely different. My father sat at the head of the table, still wearing his white coat like armor. My mother sat beside him, her face lined with worry she couldn't quite hide. The other board members, mostly old family friends and colleagues, filled the remaining seats. All of them had watched me grow up. None of them recognized me now. "Thank you all for meeting today," I began, my voice steady and professional. "I'm Sarah Phoenix, CEO of Phoenix Medical Group." The silence that followed my introduction was absolute. I watched the recognition dawn in their eyes. First confusion, then disbelief, finally understanding. My father's face had gone pale, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Sarah?" My mother's voice was barely a whisper. "Sarah Kim." "Actually, it's Sarah Phoenix now, legally changed." I moved to the front of the room, plugging my laptop into the projector. "Shall we discuss the future of Kim Family Medical Center?" "This is ridiculous." My father finally found his voice, standing up abruptly. "We called this meeting to speak with Phoenix Medical Group's CEO about a potential acquisition, not to." And you are speaking with Phoenix Medical Group's CEO. I cut him off smoothly, pulling up our company's latest financial reports. Now let's talk about your hospital's $17 million debt, your outdated systems, and your declining patient satisfaction scores. He sputtered, you can't possibly own $1 billion medical group? I finished for him. The same group that's been buying up struggling hospitals across the country. The one that's revolutionizing healthcare management? I clicked to the next slide, showing Phoenix Medical Group's current holdings. I think you'll find I can, and I do. Dr. Park, one of the senior board members, leaned forward adjusting his glasses. Sarah, you built all this? Remember when I said I wanted to improve healthcare systems? I looked directly at my parents. This is what I meant. Phoenix Medical Group owns 30 hospitals, all running at peak efficiency. We've increased patient care quality while reducing costs. Everything I tried to tell you about 5 years ago, I've proven it works. The board members exchanged glances. They knew the numbers. Kim Family Medical Center was months away from complete collapse. Phoenix Medical Group was their best hope for survival. My father stood up again, his face flushed. We'll find another buyer. Will you? I pulled up another slide. Your debt is held by Sterling Financial. Would you like to know who owns the controlling interest in Sterling? I paused, letting the implications sink in. I've spent 5 years building a safety net around this hospital, making sure that when it finally failed, and we all knew it would, I would be the only viable option. You planned this? My mother's voice cracked. All this time? No, Mother. You and Dad planned this the day you chose your precious medical legacy over your daughter. I kept my voice level, professional, even as years of hurt threatened to surface. I just made sure I'd be in a position to pick up the pieces. The next hour was a blur of numbers, projections, and terms. I laid out Phoenix Medical Group's offer. We would assume all debt, modernize the facilities, and retain most of the staff. The hospital would keep its name, but management would be completely restructured. And the current leadership? Dr. Park asked carefully, glancing at my father. Dr. Kim will be offered a position as a senior physician, focusing solely on patient care. I met my father's glare steadily. All administrative duties will be handled by Phoenix Medical Group's management team. The message was clear. He would lose all control over the hospital he built. You can't do this, he said, but his voice had lost its authority. This hospital is my life's work. No, Father, this hospital was your dream. Now it's my reality. I stood up, gathering my materials. The offer expires in 48 hours. I suggest you consider it carefully. Without Phoenix Medical Group, Kim Family Medical Center will be bankrupt within 3 months. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and one more thing. I pulled out my wallet and removed 2 worn bills. The same $127 I'd left with 5 years ago. Placed them on the table. I believe this belongs to you. Consider it my final repayment for choosing business over medicine. The walk back to my car was surreal. Through the hospital windows, I could see staff going about their duties, unaware that their entire world was about to change. In the parking lot, I passed my old parking spot, reserved for Dr. Kim, where I used to wait for rides home after helping out at the hospital. Lisa was waiting by the car. How did it go? Exactly as expected. I slid into the back seat, finally allowing myself to feel the weight of what had just happened. Have legal ready the paperwork. They'll sign. You seem very confident. They don't have a choice. I looked back at the hospital, remembering all the dreams and disappointments it held. And neither do I. That evening, as I sat in my penthouse office reviewing acquisition documents, my phone lit up with messages. First from my mother, a long emotional plea about family and forgiveness. Then from various board members, some congratulating me on my success. Others trying to secure their positions in the new regime. Nothing from my father. I wasn't surprised. His pride had always been his weakness. The same pride that had made him throw away his daughter over a career choice would now cost him his hospital. Just before midnight, my security team alerted me to a visitor in the lobby. Through the security feed, I watched my father pace back and forth, still in his white coat, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Should we send him up? The security guard asked. I considered it for a long moment. Part of me wanted to make him wait, to let him feel the same helplessness I felt that night 5 years ago. But I was no longer that wounded girl with $127 to her name. I was Sarah Phoenix, CEO of a billion-dollar corporation. Send him up. The elevator ride must have felt eternal for him. When he finally stepped into my office, his eyes widened at the view, at the obvious signs of success surrounding his disappointing daughter. "Nice office," he said stiffly. "Better than a garage, I suppose." I gestured to a chair. "Would you like to sit?" He remained standing, his doctor's posture perfect even now. "The board wants to accept your offer." "I know. They think you'll save the hospital." "I will." He flinched at my confidence. "You really built all this by yourself?" "No." I stood up, walking to the window. "I built it with the help of people who believed in me, people who saw that there's more than one way to help patients, people who didn't let their pride blind them to innovation." "Sarah," he started, then stopped, seeming to struggle with words for the first time in his life. "When you left, when we made you leave, you thought I'd come crawling back." I finished for him. "That I'd realize you were right about medicine being the only worthy path. Instead, I built something bigger than you ever imagined possible." "I was wrong," he said finally, the words seeming to physically pain him. I turned to face him, really looked at him for the first time in 5 years. The great Dr. Kim, the man who had loomed so large in my childhood, now seemed small in my massive office. "Yes, you were." I picked up the acquisition contract from my desk. "Sign this, and Kim Family Medical Center will survive. Fight me, and I'll let it collapse. Either way, I win." His hand shook slightly as he took the contract. Will you at least keep the Kim name? The hospital name stays. But make no mistake, from the moment you sign this, it's no longer yours. Everything you built, everything you dreamed of passing on to a doctor in the family, becomes part of Phoenix Medical Group." He nodded slowly, the fight finally leaving him. "May I borrow a pen?" I handed him my fountain pen, a Mont Blanc that cost more than that first $100 he'd given me to leave. He signed without reading, a broken man accepting defeat. As he turned to leave, he paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I'm proud of what you've built, even if it's not what I wanted for you." "Thank you," I said quietly, "but I didn't build it for your pride." After he left, I stood at my window for a long time, watching the city lights twinkle below. Somewhere out there was a small motel room where a scared young woman had once promised herself she'd prove everyone wrong. A cheap bank branch where $100 had become the seed of an empire. A coffee shop where a chance conversation had launched a revolution. I pulled out my phone and dialed Lisa. "Schedule a full audit of Kim Family Medical Center for next week. I want to know everything, every outdated system, every inefficiency, every opportunity for improvement." Of course, and Dr. Kim. I thought about my father's defeated expression as he signed away his life's work. Give him an office on the 4th floor. No administrative access, just a standard physician's privileges. Let him keep his white coat and his pride. That's all he has left now. But the story wasn't over. Taking over Kim Family Medical Center was just the beginning. Because in those 5 years of building Phoenix Medical Group, I discovered something bigger than revenge. I found a mission. The healthcare system was broken, not just in my parents' hospital but everywhere, and I was just getting started fixing it. The real question was, how far would I go to change everything they thought they knew about medicine? Part 3. The Revolution. The audit of Kim Family Medical Center was worse than I expected. 5 years of stubbornly clinging to outdated methods had left the hospital in shambles. Equipment needed updating, staff needed training, and the entire administrative system was practically medieval. Standing in my father's, now my, office, I reviewed the findings with my executive team. "Their patient record system is entirely paper-based," my IT director reported, disbelief evident in his voice. "In 2024, it's like stepping back in time." I ran my finger along the dusty oak desk, remembering how many times I'd stood before it as a child, listening to lectures about the noble profession of medicine. How long to implement our standard systems? 3 months minimum, and that's if we work around the clock. Make it 2. I looked out the window at the hospital grounds. The cherry trees were blooming again, just like the day I'd left. I want this place transformed before the cherry blossoms fall. The next weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I moved my office temporarily to the hospital, overseeing every detail of the transformation. Staff were retrained, systems were modernized, and the entire facility was dragged forcefully into the modern era. My father kept his head down, seeing his patients and avoiding me. Sometimes I catch glimpses of him in the hallways, his white coat no longer carrying the same authority it once did. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. My mother tried a different approach. She started leaving containers of homemade bulgogi in my office, just like she used to when I helped at the hospital during summer breaks. I returned each one untouched, with a polite note, "Thank you, but I have lunch meetings." The local medical community buzzed with gossip about the prodigal daughter's triumphant return. Some praised my success, others criticized my hostile takeover of my own family's hospital. My cousin Michael, now a resident at a prestigious hospital across town, gave interviews about the tragedy of the situation. I ignored it all, focusing instead on the numbers. Within the first month, patient satisfaction scores rose by 15%. By the second month, operating costs had decreased by 22%. The hospital was healing, even if my family wasn't. Then came the incident that changed everything. I was working late one night, reviewing implementation reports, when the emergency alert system I'd installed lit up. A major traffic accident had occurred on the highway. Multiple casualties, severe trauma cases. Under the old system, Kin Family Medical Center would have diverted most cases to larger hospitals. But we weren't the old system anymore. I rushed to the emergency department, watching as our new protocols kicked in. Digital systems tracked bed availability in real time. AI-assisted triage software helped prioritize cases. Staff movements were choreographed with military precision, guided by efficiency algorithms I'd spent years perfecting. And there, in the middle of it all, was my father. His white coat was stained with blood as he moved from patient to patient, his experienced hands steady even in chaos. For the first time, I saw him truly seeing our new systems in action, how they supported rather than replaced medical expertise, how they helped doctors save more lives. Hours later, when the crisis had passed, he found me in my office. 14 critical patients, he said quietly. We didn't lose a single one. I looked up from my laptop. That's what happens when you combine good medicine with good systems. He stood there awkwardly for a moment. Then, your mother misses you. We both do. I've been here every day for 2 months. You know what I mean, he sighed, suddenly looking very tired. When did you become so hard, Sarah? The night my parents told me I was worth nothing without a medical degree. I kept my voice level, professional. The same night I learned that sometimes you have to choose between being loved and being respected. And you chose respect. I chose success, on my own terms. I turned back to my work. The cherry blossoms are falling, Father. How does it feel to watch your old world fall with them? He left without answering, but something had shifted. The next day, I found a stack of patient files on my desk, cases where our new systems had made a critical difference. A peace offering, perhaps, or maybe just acknowledgement. By the third month, Kin Family Medical Center had become the flagship of Phoenix Medical Group's new healthcare model. We were receiving inquiries from hospitals across the country, all wanting to learn our methods. The same board members who had doubted me now fought for chances to sign my praises to industry publications. My father gradually began attending administrative meetings, not as a leader but as an observer. He asked questions about the systems, showed interest in the improvements. Small steps, but significant ones. Then came the day I found him training younger doctors on how to use our new diagnostic software. It's quite extraordinary, he was saying as I passed by the conference room. The AI can spot patterns we might miss, but it still needs our medical judgment to make final decisions. It's not replacing us, it's making us better doctors. I stood in the doorway, watching the man who had once dismissed all business innovations as threats to real medicine, now championing our systems. That evening, he knocked on my office door again. May I come in? I gestured to a chair. The cherry blossoms, he said, looking out at the bare trees. They're gone. Yes. And with them, my old hospital. He turned to face me. You've built something remarkable here, Sarah. Something I was too proud to see coming. I thought of that young woman with $127 of all the nights she worked while others doubted her. I couldn't have done it as a doctor. No, he agreed quietly. You've done something harder. You've changed how doctors work, how we think, how we help people. He placed an envelope on my desk. I'd like to retire. I opened the envelope. Inside was his resignation letter, along with a proposal for a teaching position, training new doctors on integrating modern healthcare systems with traditional medical practice. You want to teach. I want to help build the future you show us is possible. He smiled slightly. If you let me. I studied him for a long moment. The great Dr. Kim, asking his business graduate daughter for permission to help shape the future of medicine. Life had a sense of irony after all. The position is yours, I said finally, on one condition. Name it. Have dinner with me tonight. You, me, and Mom. Not as CEO and staff, but as family. I held up my hand as he started to speak, not to forget or to pretend nothing happened, but to start something new. That night, over my mother's bulgogi, we talked, really talked, perhaps for the first time in years, about dreams and disappointments, about pride and prejudice, about the different ways people can heal others. I wanted you to be a doctor, my father said, because I thought that was the only way to make a difference in healthcare. I couldn't see that you had a bigger vision. And now? I asked. Now I understand that sometimes the best way to help people isn't always the traditional way. He reached across the table and took my hand. I'm sorry we couldn't see that sooner. 6 months later, Kim Family Medical Center was named Most Innovative Hospital by Healthcare Leadership magazine. The article featured a photo of me in my office, the hospital visible through the window behind me. On my desk, clearly visible, was a framed dollar bill, part of the $127 I'd left with 5 years ago. The caption read, Sarah Phoenix, formerly Kim, proves that sometimes the best medicine isn't practiced in a white coat. My father keeps a copy of that magazine in his teaching room. Next to it is a new photo, him teaching young doctors while I stand in the background, both of us working in different ways to improve healthcare. The cherry trees still bloom every spring outside the hospital, but now they remind me not of endings, but of new beginnings. Of how sometimes you have to lose everything to build something better. Of how the hardest person to heal is often yourself. I still run Phoenix Medical Group, still work to revolutionize healthcare across the country. But now when I visit Kim Family Medical Center, I sometimes join my parents for dinner. We're not the same family we were, too much has happened for that. But we're building something new, something that respects both tradition and innovation. And sometimes, late at night in my office, I look at that framed dollar bill and smile. Because the scared young woman who left with $127 didn't just build an empire. She built a bridge between two worlds, between old medicine and new, between a father's dreams and a daughter's vision. That's worth more than all the medical degrees in the world. Last week, a young intern asked me if I regret not becoming a doctor. I showed her our latest patient outcome statistics. How our systems have helped save thousands of lives, how we've made healthcare more accessible and efficient across the country. I didn't become a doctor, I told her. I became something new. And sometimes that's exactly what medicine needs. My father, passing by at that moment, stopped and smiled. And sometimes, he added, that's exactly what a family needs too. The cherry blossoms are blooming again outside my window. But this time, they're not marking an ending. They're celebrating a revolution, in medicine and family, and in the heart of a woman who dared to heal healthcare her own way. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving others wrong. It's proving yourself right.
The night I discovered what my family was really doing with Preston Pharmaceuticals, I was working late in my father's office, as chief financial officer and the CEO's daughter. I had access to everything, or so they thought. Julia, honey, you work too hard, Dad always said, patting my shoulder with paternal pride, just like your old man. What he really meant was, stay busy with the obvious tasks. Don't look too closely at the hidden ones. Don't question why certain numbers didn't add up, or why some files were marked executive access only. But that night, exhausted and frustrated after another board meeting where my concerns had been dismissed, I decided to look closer. The irregularities had been bothering me for months. Clinical trial results that seemed too good to be true. Research budgets that fluctuated wildly. And most concerning, a pattern of small pharmaceutical companies being acquired and then mysteriously shutting down their most promising drug trials. You're being paranoid, my brother Michael had said that morning, barely looking up from his phone. As Chief Operating Officer, he should have been more concerned. The numbers are fine. Focus on the quarterly reports. But the numbers weren't fine. And after everyone had left for the day, I finally found proof. Hidden in an encrypted folder marked Project Phoenix were the real clinical trial results. Not the ones we'd submitted to the FDA, but the actual data showing our new wonder drug had failed spectacularly. Worse, it had caused severe side effects that had been carefully covered up. My hands shook as I dug deeper. Emails between my father and the research team ordering them to alter the data. Financial records showing millions in hush money paid to silence whistleblowers. And most damning of all, proof that we'd been deliberately acquiring and shutting down competing drugs that might have actually helped people. Preston Pharmaceuticals, my family's legacy for 3 generations, wasn't just committing fraud. They were actively suppressing life-saving medications to protect their market share. I was still copying files when my father's private line rang. The caller ID showed M. Chen, Martin Chen, our head of security. "Sir," Chen's voice echoed through the speaker. The system flagged unauthorized access to Project Phoenix files. My blood ran cold. I hadn't considered that the files might be monitored. "From where?" Dad's voice was sharp. "Your office computer, sir. Started about an hour ago." A pause. "Julia." "Yes, sir. Should I?" "No. I'll handle it. But put the plan in motion, just in case." The plan. Something in his tone made me move faster, copying everything I could find onto an encrypted drive. I had just pulled the drive free when the office door opened. Dad stood there, still in his dinner jacket from the charity gala he'd attended. His face was calm, but his eyes were steel. "Working late, sweetheart?" "Just catching up on some reports," I said, slipping the drive into my pocket. He stepped into the office, closing the door behind him. Funny thing about reports, they usually don't require accessing classified research files. "Dad, how much did you see?" I met his gaze steadily. "Enough." He nodded slowly, as if I'd confirmed something. "I was afraid of this. You always were too smart for your own good." "The trials failed," I said. "People died, and you covered it all up. We did what was necessary." "Necessary?" My voice rose. "You buried evidence that could have saved lives. You're still marketing that drug as safe. Keep your voice down." He moved to his desk, pressed a button on his phone. "Martin, proceed." The office door opened again. Martin Chen entered, followed by 2 men I'd never seen before. "What's going on?" I asked, though I already knew. "You're having a breakdown," Dad said softly. "The stress of the job, the responsibility, it's all become too much." "I'm not. The private facility is very discreet," he continued as if I hadn't spoken. "You'll have the best care money can buy." I backed away from the approaching men. "You can't do this." "Of course I can. I'm your father." His smile was gentle, reasonable. "I'm protecting you, just like always." By committing fraud? By hurting people? By building something that will last? His voice hardened. "Something you're now threatening to destroy." I lunged for the door, but Chen was faster. His grip on my arm was professional, impersonal. "Your choice," Dad said. "Go quietly to the facility, rest, recover. $2 million in a private account when you're better." Or, the threat hung in the air. I thought of the whistleblowers who'd been silenced. How many of them had simply disappeared? "How long?" "Until you're well again." He meant, until they were sure I wouldn't talk. I let my shoulders slump projecting defeat. Can I at least pack a bag? Already taken care of. Chen gestured to the door where a small suitcase waited. They planned this. Probably had it ready for weeks, just in case. Julia. Dad's voice softened. This is for the best. The company, our family's legacy. It's bigger than any one person. I looked at him, really looked at the man who taught me right from wrong, who'd encouraged me to always tell the truth. Now he was burying the truth along with his daughter's freedom. You'll see, he said. In time, you'll understand. I let Chen lead me out, past the family photos on the wall. Mom, gone 10 years now. Smiling from behind her desk as chairman of the board. Michael and me at graduation, both heading for our predetermined roles in the family business. Generations of Prestons building their pharmaceutical empire. All of it built on lies. The drive felt heavy in my pocket as we took the private elevator to the garage. They hadn't searched me. Why would they? I was just their broken little girl, having a mental health crisis. Chen's men escorted me to a waiting car with tinted windows. As we pulled away from Preston Pharmaceuticals' gleaming headquarters, I caught my father watching from his office window. He raised his hand in what looked like a wave goodbye. He had no idea it was really goodbye. The facility is very comfortable, Chen said from the front seat. Private room, garden access, all the amenities. I said nothing, letting them think I was sedated by whatever they'd slipped into my water back in Dad's office. Amateur move, really. I'd seen it coming and only pretended to drink. 3 hours later, they delivered me to Aurora Grove Wellness Center, a beautiful estate nestled in the Berkshire Mountains. The kind of place rich families sent their problems to disappear. Welcome, Miss Preston, the intake nurse said warmly. We'll take good care of you. I'm sure you will, I thought. Right up until I escape. The drive was still in my pocket, heavy with secrets that could bring down an empire. My father thought he was buying my silence with $2 million and a padded cell. What he'd really done was give me everything I needed to destroy him. I smiled at the nurse, playing my role. Thank you. I'm so tired. Of course you are, dear. Let's get you settled. As she led me inside, I was already planning. They thought I was having a breakdown. Really? I was just getting started. Aurora Grove Wellness Center was a prison disguised as paradise. The gardens were beautiful, the staff unfailingly polite, and every window was fitted with unbreakable glass. Your father calls daily to check on your progress, Dr. Wells told me during our morning session. He's very concerned about your delusions. I smiled vacantly, playing the dutiful patient. The medication helps. Everything seems clearer now. She made a note in her file. They all loved making notes, documenting my supposed recovery from paranoid fantasies about corporate fraud. What they didn't know was that I was documenting everything too. The drive with Preston Pharmaceuticals' secrets was safe, hidden in the one place they'd never check. Inside the cheap plastic cross I'd been allowed to keep for religious comfort. But that wasn't the only evidence I was gathering. Every day, I added to my mental inventory of Aurora Grove, staff rotations, security protocols, delivery schedules. I made friends with other patients, particularly those who had their own reasons to want out. Like Sophia, a hedge fund manager's wife who'd threatened to expose his Ponzi scheme. They all said I was crazy too. She whispered during art therapy. Turns out being right looks a lot like being insane. Or Marcus, a former tech executive whose depression coincided with discovering his company's data mining operations. He taught me to hack the facility's supposedly secure Wi-Fi during our shared recreation time. The best prison, he explained, is one where the inmates think they deserve to be there. I also had an unexpected ally on the outside, Sarah Zhang, a junior researcher who'd worked on the failed drug trials. She'd reached out through a carefully encrypted email sent during one of my sanctioned internet sessions. I saved copies too, she wrote, and I know where the bodies are buried. Literally, in one case. Let me help. Slowly, methodically, I built my network and planned my escape. The facility's security was good, but it was designed to keep unstable patients in, not to stop a clear-headed woman with resources and determination. 3 months into my treatment, I made my move. It started with a fire alarm at 3 a.m. Not a real fire, just a clever bit of programming Marcus had planted in the system. As staff rushed to follow evacuation protocols, I slipped out through the kitchen delivery entrance. Using an ID card I'd carefully cloned during my volunteer work in the administrative office. A car was waiting, driven by Sarah, who'd taken a considerable risk coming in person. "Your father's security team checks on me weekly," she said as we sped away. "They have no idea I'm the one who first tipped you off about the trials." I changed clothes in the back seat, transforming from patient to professional. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they'll never look for you." That somewhere turned out to be a small tech startup in Seattle, run by Marcus's former protégé. They needed a CFO who understood both finance and ethics. I needed a base of operations and legitimate income that couldn't be traced to Julia Preston. Emma Walsh was hired the next day, her impeccable references and background all carefully constructed by Marcus's network of disillusioned tech experts. "Your father's going crazy trying to find you," Sarah reported during one of our secure video calls. "He's hired private investigators, put pressure on local police. He really thinks you've had some kind of breakdown and wandered off." "What about Michael? Your brother's been named interim CFO. She hesitated. "He's pushing forward with new trials. More aggressive ones." My hands clenched. "More cover-ups?" "Worse. They're testing on vulnerable populations. People who won't be missed if something goes wrong." I had to move carefully. Simply exposing the evidence wasn't enough. Preston Pharmaceuticals had too many friends in high places, too many ways to bury the truth. I needed to build an airtight case that not even their army of lawyers could dismantle. For 2 years, I lived as Emma Walsh, earning trust and respect in Seattle's tech community while quietly gathering more evidence. Sarah kept me updated on Preston Pharmaceuticals' activities, documenting every violation, every cover-up. Marcus, who'd engineered his own recovery and release, helped me establish secure communication channels with other whistleblowers. Former employees, research subjects, family members of victims, all with pieces of the puzzle. Sophia, now free and divorced, used her financial expertise to trace the money trails. Shell companies, offshore accounts, slush funds for bribes. It was all documented and verified. "They're getting sloppy," she reported. "Your brother doesn't have your head for numbers. He's leaving traces everywhere." The final piece came from an unexpected source, my mother's old assistant, now retired. She contacted me through Sarah, revealing that my mother had kept her own secret files before her convenient heart attack 10 years ago. She knew something was wrong with the trial data, the assistant said. She was going to expose it all. Then suddenly she was dead. Natural causes, they said. But nothing about Preston Pharmaceuticals was natural. I received regular updates about my family from Sarah. Dad was showing signs of strain, drinking more, sleeping less. Michael was living large on company money, dating supermodels, making increasingly erratic decisions. They think they're invincible, Sarah said. The great Preston family, above the law. Everyone's invincible until they're not, I replied. By the third year, my case was solid. Every piece of evidence verified, every witness prepared, every document authenticated. The SEC was quietly building their own investigation based on anonymous tips, and the FDA was reviewing the trial data with growing concern. It was time. I chose the annual shareholders meeting for my return. Dad always made it a big event. Hundreds of investors, media coverage, a celebration of Preston Pharmaceuticals' continued dominance of the industry. This year would be different. I stood in front of my hotel mirror, transforming back into Julia Preston. The Seattle tech executive disappeared, replaced by the prodigal daughter returned from her breakdown. My phone buzzed. Sarah. Security's been updated since you left. New protocols, new team. But not new enough. I said, thinking of the access codes Marcus had acquired. Is everything in place? SEC agents are standing by. FDA representatives too. And she paused. There's something else you should know. About your mother's death. I gripped the phone tighter. What about it? I found her real autopsy report. The one that wasn't released to the press. Her voice was grim. Julia, it wasn't a heart attack. The toxicology showed. Tell me everything. I cut in. I want to know exactly what they did. As she talked, I felt the last traces of doubt or mercy fade away. This wasn't just about corporate fraud anymore. This was about murder, corruption, and a family that had lost its soul in pursuit of profit. Tomorrow, the Preston empire would fall, and I would be there to watch it burn. I checked my reflection one final time. Professional suit, perfect makeup, not a hint of the past 3 years visible on my face. I looked exactly like the daughter they tried to erase. But I wasn't that woman anymore. That Julia Preston had died in a mountain facility 3 years ago. This Julia Preston was back for revenge. And she had receipts. Preston Pharmaceuticals' annual shareholders meeting was held in the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton. 3 years ago, I would have been at the head table, reviewing quarterly reports and profit projections. Today, I watched from the lobby as investors filed in, all eager to hear about another record-breaking year. If they only knew what their money was really funding. SEC agents are in position, Sarah murmured through my earpiece. FDA representatives too, just waiting for your signal. I checked my phone one last time. Everything was ready. The evidence organized, the witnesses prepared, the regulatory agencies standing by. 3 years of work culminating in the next hour. Any sign of security noticing me? I asked, adjusting my visitor's badge. Amazing what Marcus's hacking skills could accomplish. They're watching for Julia Preston, the mental patient, Sarah replied. Not Julia Preston, the corporate executive. Your father's been telling everyone you're in a facility in Switzerland. They're not even looking here. I smiled. Dad's cover story had actually helped me. Everyone was expecting a broken woman, not someone who'd spent 3 years building a case against her own family. The ballroom was packed when I slipped in. My father stood at the podium, silver-haired and imposing in his perfectly tailored suit. Michael sat to his right, scrolling through his phone with his usual bored expression. Preston Pharmaceuticals continues to lead the industry in innovative treatments, Dad was saying. Our latest drug trials show unprecedented success rates. I thought of the real trial data hidden in my encrypted files, the covered-up deaths, the falsified results. And now, he continued, I'm pleased to announce our newest initiative. Actually, I said, standing up in the middle of the crowd, I'd like to make an announcement first. The room fell silent. Dad squinted into the audience, not recognizing me at first. Then his face went pale. Julia? Hi, Dad. I started walking toward the podium. Miss me? Michael finally looked up from his phone. His eyes widened in shock. Security. Dad barked, but I was already moving. Before anyone does anything rash, I said loudly, you might want to turn on CNBC. Right now. Someone did. On the massive screens around the ballroom, the breaking news headline appeared. Preston Pharmaceuticals under federal investigation. SEC and FDA raid corporate HURTERs. What is this? Michael demanded, standing up. What have you done? Me. I reached the stage. I just organized the evidence. All those files you thought disappeared with me. They've spent the last 3 years being verified by federal investigators. Dad's hands gripped the podium. Julia, you're not well. You need help. That's your answer for everything, isn't it? I cut him off. Anyone who threatens your precious company must be crazy. Just like Mom was crazy when she discovered the truth about the trials. Your mother died of natural causes, he said quickly. Too quickly. I pulled out my phone, held it up. Actually, I have her real autopsy report. The one that shows lethal levels of your miracle drug in her system. The one that proves you murdered her when she threatened to expose you. The room erupted in chaos. Investors started shouting questions. Reporters who'd been covering the standard corporate event suddenly had a much bigger story. You can't prove anything, Michael sneered. But his face had gone ashen. Can't I? I turned to address the crowd. For the past 3 years, I've been gathering evidence. Real clinical trial data. Financial records showing millions in bribes and hush money. Witness testimony from researchers, test subjects, even former executives. She's delusional, Dad tried, but his voice shook. Security? Remove her. Your security team is currently busy with federal agents. I smiled. And speaking of federal agents, right on cue, the ballroom doors opened. FBI agents poured in, followed by SEC investigators and FDA officials. William Preston, the lead agent announced, you're under arrest for securities fraud, conspiracy, and first-degree murder. Dad stared at me as they approached with handcuffs. Everything I did, he said quietly, was to protect this company, our legacy. No, I replied. Everything you did was to protect your own power, even if it meant killing your wife, destroying your daughter, hurting countless innocent people. You'll regret this, Michael hissed as agents moved to arrest him too. You're nothing without this family. I watched as they led my father and brother away in handcuffs. The great Preston men, finally facing consequences. Sarah appeared at my side. Your mother's old assistant is here, ready to testify about what really happened 10 years ago. I nodded. Make sure she's protected. They still have friends who might try to silence her. The next few hours were a blur of federal interviews, press statements, and shocked shareholders trying to salvage their investments. Preston Pharmaceuticals stock was already in free fall. What happens now? Sarah asked as we watched agents box up evidence from Dad's office. Now, I picked up the family photo from his desk. Mom, Dad, Michael and me, all smiling for the camera. all pretending to be perfect. Now the truth comes out. All of it. Over the next few weeks, the Preston empire crumbled. The evidence was ironclad, the witnesses credible, the paper trail undeniable. Dad and Michael faced multiple life sentences. The company was placed under federal supervision. New management was brought in to salvage what could be saved. The toxic drugs were pulled from the market, and research began into actually helping people instead of just making profit. I testified at their trial, laying out every detail of their crimes. Dad never looked at me. Michael tried to cut a deal, offering to testify against our father, but the prosecutors didn't need him. They had everything they needed. The press called it the pharmaceutical scandal of the decade. Movies were optioned, books were written. Everyone wanted to know how the Preston princess had brought down her own family's corrupt empire. But I wasn't interested in fame. I had a different mission now. 6 months after the arrests, I stood at my mother's grave. The official cause of death had been updated, her murder finally acknowledged. "I did it, Mom," I said softly. "I finished what you started." Sarah joined me, carrying a stack of papers. "The new board wants you to take over as CEO," she said. "Help rebuild the company the right way." I considered it. The chance to transform Preston Pharmaceuticals into what it should have been all along, a company that actually helped people. "On one condition," I said. "We rename it after Mom." Sarah smiled. "Catherine Pharmaceuticals does have a nice ring to it." I placed flowers on the grave, thinking about legacy and truth, and the real meaning of family. Dad and Michael would spend the rest of their lives in prison, paying for their crimes. The corrupt empire they'd built had fallen, but something new could rise from the ashes. Something honest. "Ready to get to work?" Sarah asked. I took one last look at the grave, then turned toward the future. Always. 1 year later, I sat in the CEO's office, my office, reviewing the latest trial results. Real results this time, showing promise for treating previously incurable conditions. A news alert popped up on my computer. William Preston found dead in prison cell, apparent suicide. I closed the alert without reading it. The past was done. I had a company to run, people to help, wrongs to right. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Your father left a letter for you." "Burn it," I replied. Some chapters needed to stay closed. Catherine Pharmaceuticals was thriving, its stock price recovering as investors recognized our commitment to ethical research and development. The same drive for excellence that had corrupted my father was now being used to save lives. Sarah knocked on my door. "Ready for the board meeting?" I gathered my papers, straightened my jacket, and stood up. The family portrait that once dominated this office was gone, replaced by my mother's medical school graduation photo. She was smiling, full of hope and purpose, just like I was now. "Ready?" I said. The Preston legacy was dead, but something better had taken its place. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth. It's building something true from the ruins of lies.
Absolutely not. Maxwell Porter, CEO of Porter Tech Solutions, didn't even look up from his phone as he dismissed 6 months of my work. My carefully prepared presentation still glowed on the conference room screen, showing colorful mock-ups of an app that could revolutionize how people manage their mental health. But the market research shows. I started. "Olivia," he cut me off, finally glancing up. "We're a business software company. We make accounting programs and inventory management systems. We don't do consumer apps, especially not some." He waved his hand dismissively. "Therapy thing." I gripped my laptop tighter, fighting to keep my voice steady. The mental health app market is projected to reach $3.9 billion by next year. This could open up an entirely new revenue stream for Porter Tech. And what do you know about revenue streams? Maxwell's smile was cold. You're a junior developer. You've been here what, 2 years? 3 years, I corrected, and I've contributed to every major project since. Actually, he interrupted again. That's something we need to discuss. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Send in Helen from HR. My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. I'd heard it last month when they laid off half the QA team. Helen Barnes bustled in, carrying a folder and wearing her practiced HR smile. The one that never quite reached her eyes. Olivia, she said warmly, as if she hadn't just been summoned to help destroy my career. Please sit down. I remained standing. What's this about? Maxwell leaned back in his chair, suddenly looking almost pleased. In light of recent budget constraints and your, let's call it unauthorized use of company time to develop this app idea, we're making some changes to your role. Helen opened her folder. We're offering you a position as front desk receptionist. Same benefits, though naturally there will be an adjustment to your compensation. The rest of her words faded into background noise as I processed what was happening. They were demoting me from software developer to receptionist because I dared to pitch an idea outside their narrow vision. This is ridiculous, I managed. I'm a developer. I have a master's in computer science from MIT. Then you should be more than qualified to handle the booking system, Maxwell smirked. The alternative, of course, is termination. Your choice. I thought about my apartment rent, my student loans, the current tech job market. I couldn't afford to be unemployed, not now. When do I start? My voice sounded distant, even to myself. Monday, Helen said brightly. I'll email you the new job description. We'll need your developer credentials and access cards by end of day. That evening, I sat in my tiny studio apartment, surrounded by empty takeout containers and self-pity. My laptop screen showed the app mockups I'd spent months perfecting. Mindspace, a revolutionary platform combining AI-driven therapy tools with peer support networks and professional resources. I'd gotten the idea after watching my best friend Kate struggle to find affordable therapy during the pandemic. The existing apps were clunky, impersonal, or prohibitively expensive. I knew I could build something better. My phone buzzed. Speaking of Kate, I'm going to kill him, she declared when I told her what happened. Actually murder him. With his unpretentious Italian leather shoes. I managed a weak laugh. Pretty sure that won't help my career prospects. Neither will letting them demote you to receptionist. You're brilliant, Liv. Your app idea is brilliant. Don't let them. I need the job, Kate. I sighed, looking at my sad bank balance. At least for now. She was quiet for a moment. So what are you going to do? I stared at my laptop screen, at the mock-ups that had gotten me into this mess. Then I noticed something. The Porter Tech VPN was still connected, my developer access still active. They wouldn't disable it until tomorrow. I'm going to build it anyway, I said slowly, an idea forming. Build what? The app? Yes. I sat up straighter, energy returning. They think putting me at the front desk will shut me up. Fine. I'll use their Wi-Fi, their electricity, their coffee. I'll build Mindspace right under their noses. Liv? Kate sounded worried. Is that legal? As long as I use my own equipment and don't touch any company code. Perfectly legal. They can't stop me from working on personal projects during downtime. But can you really build an entire app by yourself while working reception? I thought about the coding workshops I've been running for local high school girls, teaching them the basics of app development. About Maria, the brightest student I'd ever mentored, who was now studying computer science because I showed her it was possible. I won't be doing it alone, I replied. I know exactly who to call. The next morning, before heading to Porter Tech to turn in my developer credentials, I made 3 important calls. First, to Maria. How'd you like to get some real-world development experience? Then to my college roommate Jen, now a UX designer in Seattle. Remember that app idea I told you about? I'm doing it. You in. Finally, to my cousin David, a lawyer specializing in tech startups. I need to make sure everything I'm about to do is completely legal. By Monday morning, when I took my place behind the reception desk at Porter Tech, I had a plan. My personal laptop was loaded with development tools. I had a secure cloud repository set up under a different email. and I had a team of talented people ready to work remotely. Maxwell walked past without acknowledging me, probably expecting to see me broken and defeated. Instead, I smiled pleasantly and answered the phone. Porter Tech Solutions, how may I direct your call? Between calls, I opened my laptop and began to code. The front desk turned out to be the perfect cover. No one pays attention to the receptionist. Executives would have entire conversations right in front of me about market trends, user acquisition strategies, app monetization, all valuable intelligence for my own project. I learned more about running a successful tech company in my first week as a receptionist than I had in 3 years as a developer. Maria proved to be an invaluable partner, her fresh perspective helping us avoid the bloat that plagued most corporate apps. We coded in the evenings over video chat, her enthusiasm reminding me why I fell in love with programming in the first place. Jen's design work was extraordinary, making the interface both beautiful and intuitive. She understood exactly what we were trying to achieve, an app that felt like talking to a supportive friend rather than a cold digital tool. The work wasn't easy. I answered phones and greeted visitors all day, then coded late into the night. My apartment became a command center of sticky notes and energy drink cans. I survived on cheap coffee and determination. But slowly, mind space began to take shape. 1 month into my demotion, I overheard Maxwell talking to the head of marketing about their struggling attempts to reach younger users. I made notes and adjusted our strategy accordingly. 2 months in, a board member complained about the company's outdated UI design. I sent screenshots to Jen, who incorporated the latest design trends into our app. 3 months in, I had a working prototype. The AI algorithms were learning, the peer support network was functioning, and our first round of beta testers, recruited carefully from outside the tech industry, were providing valuable feedback. I was exhausted but exhilarated. This was more than revenge now. This was about creating something that could genuinely help people. Then came the day that almost ruined everything. I was deep in code, fixing a bug in the notification system, when a shadow fell across my desk. I looked up to find Helen from HR, wearing that same practiced smile. "Olivia, what are you working on?" I kept my face neutral, thanking every deity I could think of that my screen was angled away from her. "Just organizing my personal emails during lunch break." She nodded, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "Remember, all computer use must be related to your reception duties." Of course, I smiled back. "I'll get right back to the visitor log." That night, I called an emergency team meeting. "We need to be more careful," I told Maria and Jen over video chat. "And we need to move faster. The longer this takes, the more chances they have to shut us down." "The core features are almost ready," Maria reported. "We could launch with those and add the advanced stuff later." Jen shared her screen, showing our latest analytics. Beta user engagement is off the charts. People love it, live. They're already asking when they can share it with friends. I took a deep breath, looking at the progress we'd made. We were so close. We couldn't fail now. "Okay," I decided. "Let's set a launch date, 1 month from today." As I ended the call, a notification popped up on my screen, an email from the App Store review team. Our initial submission had been approved. Mindspace was ready for release whenever we gave the word. I glanced at my Porter Tech employee badge at the photo taken 3 years ago when I still believed in the company's mission. In 1 month, everything would change. I just had to keep my cover for a little longer. With 1 month until launch, everything that could go wrong did. First, Porter Tech installed new monitoring software on their Wi-Fi network. I discovered this when Gary from it stopped by the front desk, wearing his usual friendly smile. "Just updating security protocols," he said, typing commands into his tablet. "Too many employees using company resources for personal projects." My heart nearly stopped. Had they discovered Mindspace? But Gary just winked at me. "Though I'm sure you're not doing anything like that, right, Olivia?" I forced a laugh, mind racing. I'd need to route all development traffic through a secure VPN now. More carefully, more slowly. Time we didn't have. That evening, during our team video call, Maria had more bad news. "There's a bug in the peer support matching algorithm," she reported, sharing her screen to show lines of problematic code. "It's not properly filtering inappropriate content. If we launch like this, we'd be putting vulnerable users at risk." I finished, rubbing my tired eyes. How long to fix it? At least 2 weeks of dedicated work. 2 weeks we didn't have. But we couldn't launch with broken safety features. Mindspace was meant to help people, not harm them. Then Jen spoke up, her voice hesitant. There's something else. A new mental health app just launched, called MindMender. She sent us the link. My stomach dropped as I scrolled through their website. The interface was different, but the core concept was eerily similar to Mindspace. How is this possible? Maria asked. Did someone leak our idea? I thought back to all the conversations I'd overheard at the front desk, all the executives who'd walked past while I was coding. No, I said slowly. But Porter Tech's offices are full of people who saw my presentation. The next day, I paid closer attention to office gossip. It didn't take long to confirm my suspicions. Maxwell Porter's nephew had just launched a startup, a mental health app startup. They hadn't just rejected my idea. They'd stolen it. During lunch break, I did some digging. MindMender had raised $2 million in seed funding. Their launch was being covered by major tech blogs. And their founder, James Porter, was being hailed as a visionary entrepreneur. I wanted to scream. Instead, I called David my lawyer cousin. Can they do this? I demanded. Just steal my idea. Ideas aren't copyrightable, he reminded me gently, unless you can prove they used your actual code or designs. Which I can't, because they just took the concept. I slumped in my chair. So what do I do? Build something better, he said simply. You've been working on this for months. You understand the problem deeper than someone who just copied an idea. Use that. He was right. MindMender was sleek but superficial. Their AI responses were generic. Their peer support system was basically just a chat room. They'd built what they thought people wanted, not what people actually needed. That night, I gathered the team. Change of plans, I announced. We're not rushing to launch anymore. We're going to take the time to do this right. We spent the next week refining every feature. Maria rebuilt the matching algorithm from scratch, making it smarter and safer. Jen redesigned the interface to be more intuitive, more human. I worked through lunches, stayed late after my reception shift, coded through weekends. My apartment became a cave of coffee cups and takeout containers. Kate started dropping off actual meals, worried I'd get scurvy. You need to take care of yourself, she insisted. Isn't that what your app is all about? She had a point, so I started using Mindspace myself, testing each feature as we built it. The AI therapy tools helped me manage stress. The peer support network connected me with others building startups while working day jobs. Slowly, something unexpected happened. Watching MindMender succeed stopped feeling like failure. Instead, it clarified our mission. We weren't just building an app anymore. We were building a community, but corporate espionage wasn't done with us yet. One morning, about 2 weeks before our new launch date, I arrived at work to find someone had been through my desk. Nothing was obviously missing, but things were slightly out of place. My laptop's position had shifted by a few inches. I checked the security footage from my phone's hidden camera, installed after Helen's warning visit. At 3 a.m., a figure had entered the lobby using an executive key card. They'd spent 20 minutes going through my desk drawers. The image was grainy, but I recognized the way they moved. James Porter, the MindMender founder, Maxwell's precious nephew. They were getting nervous. That night, I moved all our code to a new repository, changed every password, and activated two-factor authentication on everything. Then I did something risky. I left my work laptop in my desk drawer, with a special surprise installed. Sure enough, the next night, James returned. This time, my hidden camera caught him copying files from my laptop onto a USB drive. What he didn't know was that the files were decoys. Fragments of code that looked like Mindspace but wouldn't actually work. And buried in those fragments was a digital signature, proof that he tried to steal our work. Insurance, just in case. But we still had bigger problems. The deadline was approaching, and our budget was running dangerously low. We'd been funding everything ourselves. My savings, Jen's freelance work, Maria's tutoring money. Then came the investor call that changed everything. I was manning the front desk, trying to fix a bug in our notification system, when a woman walked in. Early 50s, sharp suit, the kind of confident presence that made everyone else in the room sit straighter. I have an appointment with Maxwell Porter, she announced. I checked the calendar. Dr. Sarah Chen. From Horizon Ventures? She nodded, and I felt my heart skip. Horizon Ventures was one of the biggest players in health tech investment. As I called up to Maxwell's office, I noticed Dr. Chen glancing at my laptop screen. I quickly minimized my code window, but not before she raised an eyebrow. "Interesting architecture," she commented. "Building something." Before I could respond, Maxwell burst out of the elevator, all smiles and handshakes. "Sarah, wonderful to see you. Let me tell you about some exciting opportunities." They disappeared into the conference room, but not before Dr. Chen gave me a final, thoughtful look. That afternoon, after they finished their meeting, Dr. Chen stopped by my desk. "That looked like a therapy application you were working on," she said quietly, "with some unique security implementations I haven't seen before." I hesitated, then decided to take a risk. "Would you like to see more?" For the next 15 minutes, I showed her MindSpace, the e-learning algorithms, the sophisticated content filtering, the peer support network that matched users based on shared experiences rather than generic categories. "This is impressive," she said finally, "especially for someone working from a reception desk." She handed me her card. "Call my office tomorrow. Let's talk properly." That night, I barely slept. The next morning, I called Horizon Ventures from my lunch break. Dr. Chen didn't waste time with small talk. "Your app solves problems I didn't see addressed in your competitor's product. Problems that tell me you actually understand this market." "You mean MindMender?" I tried to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Ah," she paused. "You know about that situation." "Situation. James Porter has been pitching us for additional funding, but his numbers aren't good. User retention is abysmal. Turns out copying an idea isn't the same as understanding it." My heart raced. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying I'd like to discuss investment, real investment, in a team that knows what they're doing." I gripped the phone tighter. "Even though I'm just a receptionist?" She laughed. "Honey, I started my first company from my car while working as a parking attendant. I know potential when I see it." The meeting was set for the following week, but first we had a major problem to solve. That evening during our team call, I broke the news. "We can't take investment while I'm still working here. It's a conflict of interest, possibly even a legal issue." "So quit," Maria said, as if it was the simplest thing in the world. "And risk them coming after us legally, claiming I developed it on company time?" "Actually," Jen interrupted, "I have an idea about that." Her plan was audacious, risky, and absolutely perfect. "It's going to take perfect timing," I warned. Maria grinned. "When has that ever stopped us?" We spent the next week preparing everything. Every detail had to be perfect, because we weren't just launching an app anymore. We were setting a trap. And Maxwell Porter was about to walk right into it. The morning everything changed started like any other at Porter Tech's front desk. I answered calls, greeted visitors, and secretly checked our app's pre-launch metrics. MindSpace was ready. Our code was perfect, our security was ironclad, and our small army of beta testers was eager to spread the word. But timing would be everything. At exactly 9:15 a.m., right on schedule, James Porter stormed through the lobby, heading straight for his uncle's office. He didn't even glance at me, the invisible receptionist who had outsmarted him at every turn. I sent a quick text to Maria. "Showtime." 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with notifications. MindMender's App Store rating was plummeting. Hundreds of one-star reviews appeared within minutes, all with the same complaint. The app had crashed, deleting user data and exposing private messages. The bug we'd hidden in the code James stole was working perfectly. I could hear shouting from Maxwell's office. Through the glass walls, I saw James gesturing frantically at his laptop while Maxwell turned redder by the minute. At 9:30, Helen from HR hurried past my desk. A stack of papers clutched to her chest. She didn't notice that her security badge had slipped slightly, its reflection perfectly captured by my phone's camera. Another piece of evidence documented. At 9:45, Dr. Chen arrived for our scheduled meeting. I told her 10 o'clock, but as expected, she was early. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. "Quite a morning for mental health apps," she remarked casually, glancing at her phone. "Have you seen what's happening with MindMender?" "I might have heard something," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Would you like some coffee while you wait?" She smiled knowingly. "No need. I think the show's about to start." Right on cue, Maxwell's office door burst open. He stormed toward the elevator, James trailing behind him. "We have to shut it down," James was saying. "The whole platform is compromised." "Shut it?" Maxwell sputtered. "Do you know how much we've invested in this? The press release goes out in an hour." Actually, Dr. Chen stepped forward, her voice carrying across the lobby. "I believe that press release needs some revision." Maxwell froze. "Sarah? What are you doing here?" "Supporting innovation," she said smoothly. "Real innovation, not stolen ideas packaged as original work." James went pale. "I don't know what you're—" "Save it," Dr. Chen cut him off. "We have proof that MindMender's code was copied from another project. A project that was, ironically, developed right here in your building." She gestured to my desk, where my laptop screen now displayed MindSpace's interface, nearly identical to MindMender's, but with a creation date months earlier. Maxwell's face went from red to white. "Olivia?" I stood up, smoothing my receptionist's blazer. Surprise. The next few minutes were chaos. Maxwell shouted about betrayal and threatened lawsuits. James tried to delete files from his phone, not realizing we'd already documented everything. Helen emerged from HR, clutching termination papers that would never be filed. Through it all, Dr. Chen watched with quiet amusement. Finally, when Maxwell paused for breath, I spoke. "Before you threaten any more lawsuits," I said calmly, "you should know that everything, from my original pitch to James stealing my code, has been documented, including some interesting financial transactions between Porter Tech and MindMender that the SEC might want to examine." Maxwell's jaw clenched. "What do you want?" "Simple. You're going to publicly acknowledge that MindMender was based on stolen intellectual property. You're going to shut it down. And you're going to stay out of my way while I launch the real thing." "Or what?" Dr. Chen stepped forward. "Or Horizon Ventures will be very interested in discussing these documents with our friends at the Justice Department." The silence that followed was deafening. Then something unexpected happened. From the elevator, a slow clap began. Standing there was Gary from it, grinning broadly. "I wondered how long it would take them to figure it out," he said, walking over. "By the way, boss, you should know that Olivia's been running her development through a private VPN. Never touched the company network. Totally legal." I checked. Maxwell looked like he might explode. "You knew about this?" "Knew about it? I helped secure it. See, some of us actually care about innovation." Gary turned to me. "Need a job? My startup could use a developer with your skills." Before Maxwell could respond, his phone chimed. Then mine. Then everyone's phones in the lobby. Breaking tech news. MindSpace launches. Revolutionary mental health app takes App Store by storm. Maria and Jen had pushed the launch button right on schedule. I turned my laptop around, showing the rapidly climbing download numbers. "Oh, and you might want to check MindSpace's investor list. Dr. Chen isn't the only one who believes in original ideas." The names scrolled past: major venture capital firms, tech industry leaders, mental health professionals. We'd spent weeks quietly building support, preparing for this moment. Maxwell sank into a lobby chair, defeated. James was frantically texting, probably trying to salvage his reputation. Helen had disappeared back to HR, likely updating her resume. Dr. Chen touched my arm. "Ready for that meeting now." I looked around the lobby one last time, at the desk where I'd spent 6 months coding in secret, at the security cameras that had documented everything, at the Wi-Fi router that had carried my app from idea to reality. Actually, I smiled. "I have a better idea. Let's meet at my new office. I hear there's a tech startup looking to sublease Porter Tech's old space." 2 months later, I sat in what used to be Maxwell's office, now headquarters of MindSpace Technologies. Our app had passed 5 million downloads. Major healthcare providers were licensing our platform, and most importantly, we were actually helping people. Maria had joined full-time as our lead developer after graduating early. Jen had moved from Seattle to head our design team. Even Gary had jumped ship from Porter Tech, bringing his security expertise to protect our growing user base. Kate stopped by regularly, proud that her struggle had inspired something meaningful. "Just promise me one thing," she said during one visit. "Never get so successful that you forget why you built this." I pointed to the front desk visible through my office window. It was empty now, but I kept it as a reminder. That's why the desk stays, I told her, to remember that great ideas can come from anywhere, even from someone everyone else ignored. Porter Tech's stock had taken a hit after the Mindmender scandal. Maxwell stepped down as CEO, though the press release called it a planned retirement. James had disappeared to some startup incubator in Singapore. But I didn't care about revenge anymore. We were too busy building something that mattered. My phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Chen. Our latest funding round had closed. The numbers made my head spin. As I looked out over the city skyline, the same view Maxwell used to enjoy, I opened MinSpace on my phone. Our mission statement shimmered on the screen. Everyone deserves to be heard. I thought about all the nights coding in secret, all the carefully laid plans, all the people who believed in us when we were nothing but an idea and some borrowed Wi-Fi. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so amazing that they're forced to watch from the sidelines, knowing they could have been part of it. My desk phone lit up, our new receptionist letting me know my next appointment had arrived. A young developer with an idea she wanted to pitch. Send her in, I said, clearing my schedule. After all, you never know where the next great idea might come from, even if it comes from someone sitting at the front desk, quietly changing the world.
I can still hear the crystal glasses clinking at my sister Madison's promotion party. The sound echoes in my memory like a bitter reminder of that night, the night that changed everything. The elite of Boston's financial world had gathered in the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton, all to celebrate Madison Blake, the youngest VP in Sterling Financial's history. I stood in the corner, wearing a dress I'd designed myself, watching my parents beam with pride as Madison commanded the room. At 32, she was their crowning achievement. Harvard Business School graduate, rising star in finance, and now Vice President of Mergers and Acquisitions. Eleanor. My mother's voice cut through my thoughts as she appeared beside me, champagne flute in hand. At least fix your hair. Everyone here is a potential investor. I resisted the urge to touch the dark curls I'd carefully styled. My hair is fine, Mom. Fine isn't good enough in this world, she sighed, smoothing her own perfectly coiffed silver hair. Look at your sister. She understands presentation, networking. At least one daughter made it. The words stung, even though I'd heard variations of them for years. Ever since I'd turned down a position at a prestigious consulting firm to start my own business, I'd been the family disappointment. Never mind that my online fashion platform was growing steadily. In their world, if you couldn't see the corner office, success didn't exist. Ellie? Madison's voice carried across the room as she approached, her Louboutins clicking against the marble floor. Come meet Richard Sterling. He's interested in hearing about your little website. I forced a smile as she dragged me toward a distinguished-looking man in his 60s. Richard Sterling owned half of Boston's financial district, including the building where Madison now had her corner office. So, he said, peering at me over his glasses, Madison tells me you run some sort of fashion blog? Actually, I started. Stitch and Style is a technology platform that connects independent designers with... Oh, how fun, he interrupted, already looking past me for someone more important. A hobby business. Well, keep at it. Not everyone can be as driven as your sister. Madison's laugh tinkled like the crystal glasses. Ellie likes to do her own thing. But enough about that. Did you hear about the Maxwell merger? I excused myself and headed for the bar, needing something stronger than champagne. The bartender had just handed me a gin and tonic when I overheard two men in suits talking nearby. The numbers on the Maxwell deal seemed too good to be true, one muttered. Everything about Sterling's golden girl seems too good to be true, the other replied. But who's going to question success? I filed the conversation away, along with the dozens of other whispers I'd been collecting over the past year. Something about Madison's meteoric rise didn't add up, but nobody wanted to look too closely at a winning streak. My phone buzzed. A notification from my company's analytics dashboard. Another spike in user engagement. While Madison worked in her glass tower moving imaginary millions around, I was building something real. Not that my family would ever understand that. Still checking your Instagram likes. Madison appeared beside me, her smile sharp. You should really think about getting a real job, Ellie. I could put in a word at Sterling. I have a real job, I replied evenly. In fact, we just closed our series of funding round. Her perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. Oh, someone actually invested in your little project. Several someones. We raised $12 million. For a moment, her mask slipped. Something dark flashed across her face before the smile returned. How sweet. Well, don't let it go to your head. The tech bubble always bursts eventually. She sauntered away to rejoin her admirers, but not before I caught a glimpse of something else in her expression. Fear. It was gone so quickly, I might have imagined it, but it made me think of all those whispers, all those numbers that seemed too good to be true. Later that night, in my downtown loft that doubled as Stitch and Styles' office, I opened my laptop and began digging. Madison had always been driven, but lately, her success had taken on a frantic edge. The Maxwell merger she'd orchestrated had made headlines for its unprecedented returns. Every deal she touched turned to gold, almost as if. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. When I opened it, I found an envelope on the floor. No sender, no markings. Inside was a USB drive and a note. Your sister isn't as golden as she seems. If you want the truth, look at the attached files. I stared at the drive for a long time before plugging it in. Years of working in tech had taught me about security risks, but something told me this was important. As files filled my screen, spreadsheets, emails, bank statements, my hands began to shake. The perfect daughter, the family success story, was nothing but a carefully constructed lie, and I was holding proof that would bring it all crashing down. My phone rang, making me jump. It was Madison. I hope you're not planning to do anything stupid with the information you just received, she said without preamble. My blood ran cold. How did you? I have eyes everywhere, little sister. Remember that. Now, delete those files and forget about them. Focus on your cute little fashion website and stay out of my business. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in the darkness of my loft, staring at my screen where evidence of her fraud glowed accusingly. She thought she could intimidate me, just like she always had. She thought I was still the quiet sister who played it safe. But she had no idea what I'd been building in the shadows while she basked in her false spotlight. She had no idea that I'd been preparing for this moment, gathering my own resources, building my own empire. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd been saving for a special occasion. Ms. Jang, this is Eleanor Blake. I believe we need to talk about Sterling Financial and my sister. Ms. Dang, one of the most ruthless corporate raiders in the business, had been following my company's progress with interest. She'd offered to back me in any venture I chose. I'd been waiting for the right opportunity. I was wondering when you'd call, she said. I assume you've seen the evidence? Yes, and I know exactly what to do with it. As I hung up, I looked at the photo on my desk, our family at Madison's college graduation, everyone beaming at her while I stood in the background. That dynamic was about to change, but not in the way anyone expected. Madison thought she was the only one who knew how to play the game. She was wrong. While she'd been building her house of cards, I'd been laying a foundation of steel and concrete. And when her empire of lies crumbled, I would be there to pick up the pieces. For pennies on the dollar. The morning after receiving the USB drive, I walked into my company's real office. Not the loft where I'd started, but the entire 10th floor of a downtown high-rise. 50 employees looked up from their desks as I passed, each one a reminder of what I'd built while my family was busy dismissing me. Morning, Ms. Blake. My assistant Thomas handed me a coffee. Ms. Jang called twice already. And there's something else. Sterling Financial's stock dropped 15% in pre-market trading. I paused mid-sip. Any news about why? Rumors about irregularities in their recent merger deals. Nothing concrete yet, but the market's nervous. I nodded, hiding my smile. The wheels were already in motion. My office overlooked the financial district, with a perfect view of Sterling Financial's gleaming headquarters where Madison held court. But while her view came from borrowed power, mine was built on something real. Stitch and Style had revolutionized the fashion industry, connecting independent designers directly with manufacturers and consumers. We weren't just a platform. We were changing how the industry worked. Thomas, I called out, set up a meeting with our legal team and get me everything you can find about Sterling Financial's holdings, especially any distressed assets they might need to offload quickly. He raised an eyebrow but didn't question me. That's why I had hired him. He understood discretion. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Have you seen the news about Sterling? Your sister needs family support right now, not whatever scheme you're plotting. I deleted it without responding. Of course, she assumed I was plotting something. In her mind, I was always the jealous sister, never the successful one. The evidence on the USB drive had revealed the ugly truth behind Madison's perfect facade. She'd been cooking the books for years, inflating profits, hiding losses, and paying off auditors. The Maxwell merger that had made her famous, built on fraudulent valuations and insider trading. But I wasn't interested in exposing her. Not yet. I had bigger plans. Ms. Blake, Thomas appeared in my doorway. Your sister is here. Madison stormed in, her designer suit slightly wrinkled, a detail that spoke volumes about her state of mind. What did you do? She hissed, throwing a financial report on my desk. Our stock is in free fall. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. The perfect mask was cracking. I haven't done anything, Madison, but it seems the market is finally asking questions about those amazing returns of yours. Don't play innocent. Someone's been feeding information to our shareholders. Trading patterns show massive shorts being placed last week, right after you got that USB drive. I smiled. Sounds like you have a leak. Maybe you should focus on that instead of accusing your unsuccessful sister. Listen carefully. She leaned across my desk, her voice low and dangerous. If you try to destroy what I've built, I'll make sure everyone knows about your own creative accounting. My laugh caught her off guard. My accounting? Please, go ahead. Audit every penny. Unlike you, I actually built something real. Real, she scoffed. You sell dresses on the internet. No, I created a technology that's revolutionizing an entire industry. But you'd know that if you or our parents ever bothered to understand what I do. She straightened up, adjusting her jacket. Just stay out of my way, Ellie. You're playing a game you don't understand. After she left, I opened my laptop and sent an email to Ms. Jang. Time for phase 2. The next week was chaos. Anonymous tips to financial regulators triggered a formal investigation into Sterling Financial. Madison appeared on CNBC, defending their practices, but the damage was done. Their stock dropped another 30%. I watched it all from my office, remembering every dismissive comment, every family dinner where my achievements were ignored in favor of Madison's latest triumph. Ms. Blake, Thomas interrupted my thoughts. The board of Sterling Financial just called an emergency meeting, and your mother's online one. I picked up the phone, already knowing what I'd hear. What have you done? Mom's voice was shrill. Your sister's career is being destroyed, and you're just sitting there watching. Actually, I replied calmly, I'm not just watching, I'm buying. What? Sterling stock. My company has been acquiring shares all week. At these prices, it's quite a bargain. Silence. Then, you planned this. You're trying to take over Sterling Financial. No, Mom. Madison destroyed Sterling Financial. I'm just here to pick up the pieces. I hung up and turned to Thomas. Get me Ms. Zhang. It's time to make our move. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. While Madison had been building her house of cards, I had been quietly amassing resources. Stitch and Style's success had given me significant capital, and Ms. Zhang's backing provided the rest. Now, with Sterling's stock in free fall, we could acquire controlling interest for a fraction of its real value. But first, the final blow had to fall. I opened the USB drive and began forwarding its contents to federal regulators. Within hours, the story broke across all major news networks. Sterling Financial BPACUSED of massive FRAD. Madison BLAK. The fall of a financial protege. SECLAUNCESCRMINL NVESTIG into Sterling DELINGs. My phone exploded with messages from family members. I ignored them all except one. From my father. You're no longer my daughter. I stared at those words for a long time before replying. I never was. Madison was your only daughter. I was just the disappointment who built an empire while you weren't watching. That night, as Sterling Financial's board met to deal with the crisis, I sat in my office with Ms. Zhang, watching the city lights flicker below. They'll have to sell, she said, swirling her whiskey. The question is, who will they sell to? I smiled. They'll sell to Phoenix Acquisitions. Your shell company, she nodded approvingly. They won't know it's you until it's too late. Exactly. Madison might understand fraud, but she never understood real business. She never understood me. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of acquiring the company where my sister had built her fraudulent empire. The company that had made her the family's golden child while I was dismissed as a failure. But tonight, I allowed myself a moment to savor the irony. The little fashion website they'd mocked had given me the power to buy their precious Sterling Financial for pennies on the dollar. And this was just the beginning. The morning of the Sterling Financial board meeting dawned bright and cold. I dressed carefully in a suit I designed myself. Midnight blue, impeccably tailored. Today, I would step out of the shadows and into my full power. The lobby of Sterling Financial was chaos. Reporters crowded the entrance, cameras flashing. Security guards struggled to maintain order as protesters waved signs demanding justice for defrauded investors. I walked through it all, Thomas at my side carrying the acquisition paperwork. The same security guard who had once stopped me claiming I didn't look like I belonged here, now held the door open with a respectful nod. The boardroom fell silent as I entered. Madison sat at the far end. Her perfect facade finally cracked. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, her designer outfit slightly askew. Our parents flanked her like protective shields, but even they couldn't protect her now. Richard Sterling himself sat at the head of the table, looking every bit as old as his 70 years. The last week had aged him considerably. "What is she doing here?" Mom demanded, standing up. "This is a private board meeting." I took a seat directly opposite Madison. "I'm here representing Phoenix Acquisitions. We own 30% of Sterling Financial's shares, which entitles us to a seat at this table." "Phoenix Acquisitions?" Madison's voice cracked. "That's impossible. They're the ones who've been buying up our stock." I smiled, sliding a document across the table. "Not just buying. As of this morning, we've made an offer to acquire controlling interest in Sterling Financial. The paperwork is all there." The room erupted in chaos. Board members frantically flipped through the documents while Madison stared at me, realization dawning in her eyes. "You," she whispered. "You're Phoenix." "Surprise, sister dear." Richard Sterling cleared his throat. "The offer appears legitimate. Given our current situation, the board must consider it. You can't be serious." Madison slammed her hand on the table. "She orchestrated this whole thing. She's trying to steal my company." "Your company?" I laughed softly. "You mean the company you nearly destroyed with your fraud? The company whose stock is worth less than half what it was 2 weeks ago? That company?" Our father stood up, his face red with anger. "How dare you come in here like this? After what you've done to your sister?" "What I've done?" I met his gaze steadily. "I built a legitimate billion-dollar company while you were all fawning over Madison's house of cards. I created real value while she created fake profits. The only thing I'm guilty of is seeing an opportunity when it presented itself." "The board needs to discuss this privately," Richard Sterling announced. "Ms. Blake, both Ms. Blakes, please wait outside." In the hallway, Madison grabbed my arm. "Why? Why did you do this to me?" "To you?" I pulled free from her grip. "This isn't about you, Madison. It never was. This is about building something real, something lasting, something you never understood. I built something real. I was successful. You built a pyramid scheme in a designer suit," I corrected her. "And now, it's crumbling, just like every house of cards eventually does." Our mother approached, her heels clicking angrily on the marble floor. "Your father and I will never forgive you for this betrayal." I smiled sadly. "Like you never forgave me for choosing my own path, for building something you couldn't understand or control. I stopped needing your forgiveness a long time ago." The boardroom doors opened. Richard Sterling emerged, looking grave. "The board has voted to accept Phoenix Acquisitions' offer," he announced. "Given the circumstances, we feel it's in the best interest of our shareholders." Madison crumpled into a nearby chair, her perfect world finally shattered completely. I turned to Thomas. "Please escort the former VP to clear out her office and call security. I want all her files preserved for the federal investigation." "You can't do this," Madison shrieked as security approached. "This is my company." "Not anymore," I replied calmly. "Oh, and Madison? The corner office has a lovely view. I think I'll keep it." Over the next few hours, I watched from my new office as Madison was escorted from the building, carrying a box of personal items. Our parents left shortly after, not even glancing up at my window. My phone buzzed. A text from Ms. Zhang. Beautifully executed. Your sister never saw it coming. I smiled, remembering all those family dinners where they dismissed my little website. Now Stitch in Style was worth billions, and I'd just acquired one of Boston's oldest financial institutions. The next morning, the headlines told the story. Tech HEN in your EQIRES STERLINJU finance Eleanor BLAK from Fayion STRTUP to financial POWERATOUSE Sterling SVANDAL 1 STER falls as annual data rises. A week later, I received an invitation to a family dinner. I almost laughed at their predictability. Now that I'd proven my success, they wanted to reconcile. I sent back a simple response. Too busy running 2 companies. Maybe next time. Madison eventually pleaded guilty to multiple counts of securities fraud. She served 5 years in a minimum security prison. Our parents sold their house to pay legal bills and moved to Florida, where they presumably still tell everyone about their successful daughter. Only now they mean me, though they never mention how I achieved that success. As for me, I merged Sterling's legitimate assets with my tech empire, creating something entirely new. The same analysts who once dismissed me as a fashion blogger now write lengthy profiles about my business genius. But the real victory wasn't in the acquisition or the headlines. It was in proving that success doesn't always wear a designer suit or work in a corner office. Sometimes it builds quietly, steadily, until it's strong enough to reshape the world. Last week, I received a letter from Madison, newly released from prison. I understand now, she wrote. You aren't just building a company. You are building revenge. I didn't bother responding. She still didn't get it. This was never about revenge. It was about creation versus destruction, substance versus appearance, truth versus lies. In my new office, high above Boston's financial district, I keep a photo from Madison's promotion party. The night she was celebrated while I stood in the corner, supposedly jealous of her success. I keep it to remind myself that true power doesn't need to announce itself. It builds in silence, grows in shadow, until it's ready to step into the light. Sometimes I think about that night, about Mom's words. At least one daughter made it. She was right, just not in the way she thought.
I stood in the dusty aisles of Miller's General Store, running my fingers along shelves that hadn't changed since I was a child. The ancient cash register still sat on the counter, its brass finish dulled by decades of use. Sunlight filtered through windows that needed cleaning, casting patterns on the worn wooden floor where my father had taught me to stock shelves 30 years ago. Sarah, you can't be serious. My brother Michael's voice cut through my nostalgia. The property assessor valued this dump at less than $50,000. Your share of Dad's savings is worth 6 times that. I turned to face my siblings, Michael in his expensive suit, Patricia in her designer dress, both looking at me like I'd lost my mind. They'd flown in from their respective coastal cities for the reading of our father's will, already arguing over how to split his considerable liquid assets. I've made my decision, I said quietly. You two can split the money. I'm taking the store. Patricia threw up her hands in exasperation. This is ridiculous. You're giving up $300,000 for a failing business in the middle of nowhere. The place barely breaks even. She wasn't wrong about the numbers. Miller's General Store had been struggling for years, hanging on mainly because our father refused to close the place where he'd raised his family. The small town of Cedar Grove had been slowly dying as younger people moved away, leaving behind an aging population that could barely keep the few remaining businesses afloat. It's not about the money, I tried to explain. This store was Dad's life. It meant something to him. Dad's dead, Michael said bluntly, and sentiment doesn't pay bills. Take the cash, Sarah. Be smart for once in your life. I felt the familiar sting of his condescension. Michael, the successful investment banker. Patricia, the high-powered attorney. And me? Just the middle child who'd stayed in Cedar Grove, helping Dad run the store while getting my business degree from the local college. The decision's made, I said firmly. Mr. Harrison has the paperwork ready at his office. We can sign this afternoon. Patricia shook her head, her perfect blonde hair swaying. Fine, throw your inheritance away, but don't come crying to us when this place finally goes under. They left in a cloud of expensive perfume and disapproval, the bell over the door chiming their exit just as it had thousands of times before. I sank onto the old stool behind the counter, remembering how Dad used to sit there, greeting every customer by name. You sure about this, Sarah? Tom Harrison, our family's longtime lawyer, had stayed behind. He'd known me since I was a kid stealing penny candy from the jar that still sat on the counter. Did you know about the highway proposal? I asked instead of answering. He blinked, obviously surprised. The interstate expansion, it's just a rumor. The state won't make a decision for months, maybe years. I pulled a folder from my bag and handed it to him. Inside were detailed maps, environmental impact studies, and most importantly, the preliminary approval for a new highway exit that would dump traffic less than a quarter mile from Miller's General Store. Where did you get these? Tom asked, flipping through pages. I didn't spend all those years just stocking shelves, I said. While Dad ran the store, I got my business degree, did market research, made connections with the city planning office. That highway isn't a rumor, it's happening. They're announcing it next month. Understanding dawned on his face, and when they do, property values in the area will skyrocket, I finished, especially commercial lots with good road access. Like this one. He looked around the store with new eyes. Does anyone else know? Just the planning committee and a few investors they're courting. I found out because I've been attending the town council meetings for years. Nobody pays attention to the quiet one taking notes in the back row. Tom chuckled. You always were the smart one, no matter what your siblings think. He sobered. But Sarah, even with the highway coming, turning this place around won't be easy. The building needs work. The inventory is outdated. I know. I stood up, walking the aisles I knew by heart. But I got plans, big ones. I did too. While Michael and Patricia had been building their careers in bigger cities, I've been studying, learning, preparing. Dad might not have understood my endless questions about supply chains and profit margins, but he'd supported me anyway. He even paid for extra business classes when I expressed interest in modernizing the store's operations. Your father knew, Tom said suddenly, about the highway. That's why he changed his will last month. I stopped, surprised. What? He left the store entirely up to your choice. Said you'd know what to do with it. Tom smiled. Guess he was right. A lump formed in my throat. Dad and I hadn't always understood each other, but he believed in me when no one else did. Now I had the chance to prove that faith wasn't misplaced. The next few weeks passed in a blur of paperwork and planning. Michael and Patricia left town immediately after the will was settled, making it clear they wanted nothing to do with my foolish decision. I didn't mind. For the first time in my life, I was completely in charge of my own destiny. I started small, cleaning and organizing, taking inventory of what worked and what needed to change. The store had good bones, solid construction, a prime location at the town's main intersection, and plenty of parking space that would become invaluable once the highway exit opened. But it needed work. A lot of work. You're crazy, Ben Tucker told me when I hired his construction company to renovate. Ben had been my high school sweetheart before life took us in different directions. Now he ran the most respected construction firm in 3 counties. Probably, I agreed, showing him my plans. But look at these drawings. Modern retail space in front, warehouse capability in back. New loading dock, expanded parking. Thinking bigger than a general store? Much bigger. I pulled out the highway plans. See this exit? In 2 years, this will be the main route into town. We'll have thousands of cars passing by daily. The store needs to be ready. Ben studied the drawings, his contractor's mind already working. It's a solid plan, Sarah, but it'll cost a lot. I've got investors lined up. Another surprise for my siblings. While they've been dismissing me as the quiet one watching the store, I've been building relationships with local business leaders, people who believe in Cedar Grove's future. Like me, Ben said quietly. Our eyes met for a moment, and I remembered why I'd once thought we'd spend our lives together. But that was a long time ago. The work needs to be done before the highway announcement, I said, all business again. Once that happens, every contractor in the county will be booked solid. Ben nodded. We can start next week. But Sarah, he hesitated. Your siblings. They're going to be angry when they realize what you've done. They're already angry. I shrugged. Might as well give them a real reason. The renovation began on a Monday. By Wednesday, half the town was talking about my foolishness, investing money in a dying business in a dying town. I ignored them, focusing on the future I could see so clearly. The old shelving came out first, replaced by modern retail fixtures. The creaky wooden floor was restored to its original glory. New lighting transformed the space from dim and dated to bright and welcoming. Every change hurt my dwindling savings, but I knew it would be worth it. You're bleeding money, my accountant warned me after the first month. The store's income can't support these improvements. It will, I promised. Just wait. I worked 18-hour days, running the store while supervising renovations. The old-timers who'd been shopping here for decades grumbled about the changes, but even they had to admit the place looked better. Younger families started coming in, attracted by the cleaner space and modernized inventory. Then came the first test of my resolve. Sarah? Mrs. Jenkins, my nearest neighbor, caught me as I was closing up one night. I heard a rumor about developers wanting to buy up property along Main Street. My heart skipped. Oh? Offering good money, they say. Above market value. She peered at me. Had any offers? I had 3 in the past week, each higher than the last. Word was leaking about the highway, though nothing official had been announced. Not interested in selling, I said firmly. But surely, with all the money you're spending on renovations, I just smiled and wished her good night. Let them think I was foolish. Soon they'd understand. The next morning, I found Michael waiting in the parking lot, looking distinctly out of place in his $1,000 suit. I hear you're turning down purchase offers, he said without preamble. Hello to you too, brother. Sarah, be reasonable. I've got a client willing to pay 3 times what this place is worth. Take the money and walk away. I unlocked the store's front door, breathing in the familiar scent of wood and memories. Not interested. Damn it, Sarah. He grabbed my arm. I'm trying to help you. Dad's gone. You don't have to prove anything anymore. I pulled away. You never understood him, Michael. Or me. This isn't about proving anything. It's about building something. Building what? A general store in a town that's practically a ghost town. You'll see. I left him standing in the parking lot, as confused as he'd always been by the sister who didn't fit his worldview. But Michael's visit was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, more developers came calling. Some tried to charm me, others to intimidate. Patricia even flew in from Los Angeles, armed with legal arguments about fiduciary responsibility and missed opportunities. I turned them all down. The renovations continued, eating through my savings and the small business loan I'd secured. Some days, watching the numbers in my account drop, I wondered if my siblings were right, if I was being foolish, throwing good money after bad. Then I'd look at the highway plans hidden away in my office and remember what Dad used to say. Sometimes you have to believe in something before anyone else can see it. I believed in Miller's General Store, in Cedar Grove, in myself, and soon everyone else would too. But that's another part of the story. The morning of the highway announcement arrived with a mix of fog and anticipation. I stood in Miller's newly renovated storefront, watching town council members and state officials set up for their press conference in the park across the street. Television vans lined Main Street, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like mechanical flowers. Quite a crowd, Ben observed, joining me at the window. The renovation was nearly complete, though we kept the iconic Miller's sign. Some things were worth preserving. Wait until they make the announcement, I said quietly. This is nothing compared to what's coming. My phone buzzed. Michael calling for the 3rd time that morning. I ignored it, just as I'd ignored Patricia's increasingly threatening emails about family responsibility and fiscal insanity. They figured out something was happening in Cedar Grove, but they were still in the dark about the scale of it. The store's new automatic doors whispered open, admitting Tom Harrison. Our family lawyer looked harried, his bow tie slightly askew. Sarah, we need to talk. Your siblings have filed an injunction. to prevent me from selling the property. I smiled. Let me guess. They're claiming Dad wasn't of sound mind when he changed the will. Tom blinked. How did you? Because I know my siblings. And because 3 different developers called this morning, hinting they'd help fight any legal challenges if I agreed to sell to them. This is serious, Sarah. They've hired Blackwood and Reed, top real estate attorneys. Let them waste their money. I turned from the window, surveying the transformed space. The old general store had become something entirely new. Modern retail displays, a gourmet coffee bar, and local artisan goods mixed with everyday necessities. The warehouse space in back was ready too, though no one knew what for. Yet. You're not planning to sell at all, are you? Tom asked slowly. Tom, what's the largest retailer in Cedar Grove? He frowned. Well, since the Walmart closed last year, I guess Miller's is, now that you've expanded. And how many delivery services operate in the county? None, since the pandemic killed that startup last winter. I smiled. Wrong, one starts operations today. Understanding dawned on his face. The warehouse space, the loading docks. Miller's isn't just a store anymore, I explained. It's a distribution hub. We'll serve 3 counties, delivering everything from groceries to hardware. The highway exit makes us the perfect location. But the announcement hasn't even. The sound of microphone feedback cut him off. Outside, the mayor was approaching the podium, flanked by state transportation officials. The crowd, much larger now, pressed forward eagerly. I didn't need to hear the speech. I've been preparing for this moment for months. Instead, I watched faces in the crowd as the mayor revealed the interstate expansion plans, complete with Cedar Grove's new exit ramp, conveniently located just down the road from Miller's. The reaction was immediate. People gasped, pointed, already turning to look at nearby properties with new eyes. Property values would triple, at minimum. Commercial lots like mine would be worth even more. My phone exploded with notifications. Michael and Patricia had obviously heard the news. A text from Michael popped up. Do not sell to anyone. Call me immediately. I deleted it without reading the rest. Sarah, Ben called from the back. You've got visitors. I turned to find 3 men in expensive suits being admitted through the loading dock entrance. I recognized them immediately. Executives from National Market Chain, one of the largest retail corporations in the country. Ms. Miller, the oldest one, stepped forward, hand extended. I'm James Whitmore, Vice President of Acquisitions for NMC. We've been following your operation with great interest. Of course they had. I'd made sure word of my renovations and expansion reached the right ears. Gentlemen, I kept my voice professionally neutral. This is quite a surprise. Is it? Whitmore smiled. You've positioned yourself brilliantly. Modern facility, strategic location, distribution capabilities, exactly what we look for in new franchise locations. And there it was, the real reason for their visit. National Market Chain had been trying to establish a presence in this part of the state for years, but property costs and local opposition had stymied them. Now, with the highway coming, we're prepared to make a very generous offer, another executive chimed in, both for the property and for ongoing franchise rights. I gestured to my office. Let's discuss it. The meeting lasted 2 hours. Their initial offer was impressive, enough to make Michael and Patricia's inheritance shares look like pocket change. But I had my own terms. Miller's keeps its name, I insisted. We maintain local control over inventory and operations, and the distribution network serves independent retailers too, not just National Market Chain stores. Whitmore frowned. That's unusual. Normally our franchise agreements are more standardized. This isn't a normal situation. I laid out my market research, showing population projections, traffic patterns, retail gaps in surrounding communities. You're not just buying a store location. You're buying a ready-made distribution network in an underserved region, one that's about to experience massive growth. They huddled in whispered consultation while I waited calmly. Finally, Whitmore spoke. Your terms are acceptable, with some modifications. We'll have our lawyers draw up. My lawyers will draw up the papers, I corrected. I believe you know the firm, Blackwood and Reed. Whitmore's eyebrows shot up. Your siblings' attorneys? Not anymore. As of this morning, they work for me. Amazing what you can accomplish with the right business plan and profit projections. After the executives left, Ben found me in the office, staring at the old photo of Dad behind the counter. "You planned this whole thing," he said. It wasn't a question. The renovations, the distribution setup, even letting word leak to national market chain. I had a good teacher. I touched Dad's photograph. He always said opportunity comes to those who prepare for it. "Sarah," Tom burst in, waving his phone. "You won't believe. Blackwood and Reed just withdrew from your siblings' case. They're representing you now, along with handling the national market chain contracts." I smiled at his astonished expression. Amazing how quickly top law firms change allegiance when they realize which side has the better position. My phone buzzed again. Patricia this time, probably having just heard about her lawyers jumping ship. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "How dare you?" she shrieked without preamble. "You manipulative little. You knew about the highway all along." "Yes. You last think you were being sentimental, taking that worthless store while we got the cash. But you played us." "No, Patricia. I let you be exactly who you are. People so convinced of your own superiority that you never bothered to look deeper. Just like you never bothered to understand Dad, or this town, or me." "We're contesting everything," she seethed. "The will, the store ownership, all of it. Michael's already talking to other attorneys." "Tell Michael to check his email first," I suggested mildly. "The one from his biggest investment client. They've signed an exclusive shipping contract with Miller's Distribution Services. Amazing how much influence you can have when you control the only distribution hub in 3 counties. Silence. "Then, you wouldn't." "Cancel the lawsuits, Patricia. Stop trying to interfere. Or Michael's client won't be the only one reconsidering their business relationships." I ended the call to find Ben and Tom staring at me with a mixture of admiration and shock. "Remind me never to underestimate you," Ben said finally. I looked out the window at the dispersing crowd, already imagining the changes coming to Cedar Grove. The highway exit would bring new businesses, new families, new life to our fading town. And at the heart of it all would be Miller's, not just a general store anymore, but the center of a retail and distribution network that would serve the entire region. My siblings had laughed when I chose the store over cash. They dismissed me as sentimental, foolish, stuck in the past. But I'd seen the future coming and I prepared for it. Now they'd understand exactly what they'd given up, not just the property value, but the chance to be part of something bigger than their own ambitions. "Sarah?" Tom's voice broke into my thoughts. "Your brother's on the other line, says it's urgent." I smiled, remembering all the times Michael had patronized me, treated me like the family failure. "Tell him I'm busy. I've got an empire to build." But the empire would have to wait a few more hours. I had a store to run, customers to serve, a legacy to honor and transform. Dad had believed in me when no one else did. Now I would prove that his faith was justified. The automatic doors whispered open again, admitting the first curious locals eager to see what all the commotion was about. Time to show them that Miller's and Cedar Grove were just getting started. The real changes were still to come. But that's another part of the story. 6 months after the highway announcement, I stood in Miller's expanded parking lot watching the new sign being installed. The familiar Miller's remained, but underneath now read, "A national market chain partner, serving Cedar Grove since 1952. The lot was full, as it had been every day since we launched the distribution service. Local restaurants picked up supplies in the morning, delivery vans came and went throughout the day, and regular customers kept the retail floor busy. We'd had to hire 20 new employees just to keep up with demand. "Looking good," Ben said, joining me outside. His construction company had become our go-to contractor, handling expansions for both the main store and our new satellite locations in neighboring towns. "The highway exit opens next week," I replied, just in time for holiday shopping. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "We need to talk. In person, please." It was the please that caught my attention. My brother hadn't said please to me in 20 years. Before I could respond, a sleek black car pulled into the lot. Patricia stepped out, looking oddly uncertain in her designer suit. Behind her, Michael emerged from the driver's side. "Well," I said quietly to Ben, "this should be interesting." My siblings approached slowly, taking in the transformed property. The old general store was now the centerpiece of a modern retail complex. Loading docks hummed with activity, delivery vans came and went, and customers streamed in and out of the automatic doors. "Sarah," Michael spoke first, his usual arrogance notably absent. "You've been busy." "Very," I kept my voice neutral. "What brings you both here? More legal threats?" Patricia flinched. "We dropped all the lawsuits. You know that." "I do. I also know Michael's investment firm just lost 3 more clients to companies that ship exclusively through Miller's distribution." "That's actually why we're here," Michael said. "To talk business, real business." I raised an eyebrow but gestured toward the store. "My office is upstairs." They followed me through the retail floor, past the gourmet coffee bar where locals gathered for their morning caffeine, past the artisan goods section featuring products from small businesses across 3 counties. Everything that made Cedar Grove special, wrapped in modern retail efficiency. "You've kept a lot of the old elements," Patricia observed, touching a restored wooden beam. "Some things are worth preserving." My office occupied Dad's old storage room, though now it had windows overlooking Main Street. His original desk sat in one corner, restored and polished. The wall behind it held the store's first dollar, framed beside the multi-million-dollar contract with national market chain. "Nice view," Michael said, taking a seat. "You can see the highway construction from here." "That's the point." I settled behind the desk. "What do you want?" My siblings exchanged glances. Patricia spoke first. "We were wrong," she said simply. "About the store, about you, about everything." "We didn't see what Dad saw," Michael added. "The potential. The vision. And now that it's successful, you want in." My tone made it clear what I thought of their timing. "No," Patricia surprised me. "We want to apologize." Michael pulled out a folder. "And to show you something. Remember when Dad took that trip last spring, right before he got sick?" I nodded. Dad had disappeared for a week, coming back quieter than usual. "He came to see me," Michael said. "Showed me plans for expanding the store, modernizing it. Asked for investment advice." He slid the folder across the desk. I laughed at him. Told him it was a waste of time. I opened the folder. Inside were rough sketches of everything I built, the distribution network, the modernized store, even the satellite locations. Dad's handwriting covered the margins with notes and calculations. "He had the same vision you did," Patricia said softly. "He just didn't live to see it happen." "Why are you showing me this?" Michael leaned forward. "Because we finally understand. Dad didn't leave you the store out of sentiment. He left it to you because you were the only one who could make his dream real." I stared at the sketches, throat tight. All those years helping in the store, asking questions, learning the business. Dad had been preparing me. He'd seen what the store could become, just as I had. "We'd like to invest," Michael continued. "Not to take over, we've learned that lesson, but to be part of what you're building. What Dad wanted to build. On your terms," Patricia added quickly. "We'll take minority shares, no voting rights. We want to help grow Dad's legacy." I looked at my siblings, really looked at them. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen before. Respect. "I'll have to think about it," I said finally. "Of course." They stood to leave, but Patricia paused at the door. "Sarah, that day at the will reading, when you took the store instead of cash, you weren't being sentimental at all, were you?" I smiled. "I was. Just not about the money." After they left, I sat looking at Dad's plans. They matched mine almost exactly. He'd seen the same opportunities, understood the same changes coming to Cedar Grove. He'd known what the store could become in the right hands. The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Miller? The national market chain executives are here for the franchise review." "Send them up." I tucked Dad's plans into my desk drawer. Time to show another group of doubters exactly what a small-town store could do. The next few months transformed Cedar Grove. The highway exit opened, bringing a steady stream of travelers and commuters. Other businesses sprang up along the route, but Miller's remained the heart of town. Part modern retail hub, part community center, part distribution network serving the entire region. Michael and Patricia became silent partners, their business expertise actually proving useful as we expanded. They never tried to take control, never questioned my decisions. Instead, they watched and learned as their foolish sister turned a dying general store into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. 1 year to the day after the highway opened, we held a grand celebration. The parking lot became a street fair with local vendors, live music, and hundreds of people enjoying the autumn sunshine. I stood beside the old Miller's sign, now the flagship of a growing retail chain, and remembered Dad's words. Sometimes you have to believe in something before anyone else can see it. The town council presented me with a ceremonial key to the city. The mayor made a speech about vision and progress. But the moment that meant most came later, after the crowds had gone. "You did it, kid," Ben said, finding me in Dad's old office. "You really did it." "We did it," I corrected. "The whole town did it. We just needed someone to believe it was possible. Your father would be proud." He knew. I touched the sketch in my desk drawer. He always knew. Cedar Grove wasn't dying anymore. The highway had brought new life, new opportunities, new families moving in. But it wasn't just the highway, it was the people who'd seen what was coming and prepared for it. People like Dad, who'd quietly planned for a future he wouldn't live to see. People like me, who'd chosen a rundown store over quick cash because we believed in something bigger. My siblings had laughed when I picked the store. They called me foolish, sentimental, stuck in the past. But sometimes the past is just the foundation for the future. Sometimes an old general store is really the seed of something greater. And sometimes the quiet one, the one everyone underestimates, is the one who sees it all coming. Standing in my office that evening, watching darkness fall over the busy parking lot, I smiled at Dad's old photo on the wall. "We did it," I whispered. "We turned your little store into something amazing." The automatic doors whispered open below, admitting late customers into the bright, welcoming space. Delivery vans pulled in to collect tomorrow's shipments. The coffee bar hosted a local book club meeting. Everything Dad had dreamed of, everything I had built, humming with life and possibility. Michael and Patricia had finally understood what they'd given up, not just the real estate value, but the chance to be part of something special. They'd learned their lesson about underestimating quiet sisters and small-town stores. But by then, I didn't need their approval anymore. I had built something bigger than their doubts, stronger than their dismissal, more valuable than any cash inheritance. I had taken Dad's dream and made it real. And in the end, that was worth more than all the highway exits in the world. The store's lights glowed in the gathering dark, a beacon for travelers and locals alike. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new chances to grow. But tonight, I simply stood at my window and watched my little town embrace its future. They called the store worthless until the highway changed everything. But they'd been wrong about both. The highway didn't change the store's value. It just helped everyone else see what Dad and I had known all along. Sometimes the best investments aren't the ones that look good on paper. Sometimes they're the ones that look like rundown general stores in dying towns, waiting for someone to believe in them. Dad had believed. I had believed. And now finally, everyone else did too.
I stood in the doorway of my Aunt Catherine's lavish home, watching the annual Thanksgiving chaos unfold. The mansion's grand foyer was decorated with elaborate autumn arrangements, the air heavy with the scent of turkey and expensive perfume. This was the Morrison family's yearly display of wealth and status, a tradition I'd grown to despise. "Olivia," my cousin Madison's shrill voice cut through the noise. "You're actually here. We weren't sure you'd come, given your circumstances." I forced a polite smile, smoothing down my deliberately understated dress. If only they knew that my circumstances included being CEO of Sterling Enterprises, the parent company that had quietly acquired Morrison Technologies 3 months ago. "The kids' table is that way," Aunt Catherine called out, not bothering to hide her smirk. "Though I suppose that's where you belong, given your position in life." At 32, I was the family's designated failure, the one who'd walked away from the prestigious family business to strike out on my own. Little did they know that my tiny consulting business was actually a cover for my role as the reclusive founder of Sterling Enterprises. "Thanks, Aunt Catherine," I said quietly, watching her turn back to fawning over Madison's new Cartier bracelet, probably bought with her Morrison Technologies salary, which I now technically paid. The kids' table was exactly as depressing as expected. A rickety card table set up in the corner, far from the elegant main dining room. I took my seat among my young cousins, some barely in their teens, while watching the successful adults gather around the main table. Poor Olivia. I heard my Uncle James stage whisper to my mother. Still hasn't found her way, has she? Good thing the rest of us know how to succeed in business. My mother sighed dramatically. We tried to tell her to stay at Morrison Technologies, but she had to be different, had to chase her silly dreams. I bit back a laugh, thinking about the meeting scheduled for Monday morning. The one where Morrison Technologies employees would discover that their company had been acquired by Sterling Enterprises months ago. The one where they'd learn that their jobs, their salaries, their precious positions all depended on the woman they'd banished to the kids' table. Aunt Olivia, my 12-year-old cousin Tommy whispered, "Why do they make you sit here? You're a grown-up." I smiled at him, the first genuine smile of the evening. Because they think success only looks one way, Tommy. They haven't learned that power doesn't always announce itself. Is that why you're letting them talk about you like that? His young face was serious. Even though you're actually their bee? Sha. I pressed a finger to my lips, winking at him. Tommy was the only one who knew my secret. He discovered it by accident when he'd seen my name on some documents while visiting my office. But he kept quiet, understanding instinctively what I was doing. Around the main table, the conversation had turned to business, as it always did. Morrison Technologies had been the family's pride and joy for 3 generations. Now my Uncle James ran it, with my cousins Madison and Tyler in executive positions they hadn't earned. The company's doing better than ever, James boasted, raising his wine glass. We're expanding into new markets, hiring more staff. This time next year, we'll be twice the size we are now. I hid my smile behind my water glass. He had no idea that Sterling Enterprises had already begun restructuring plans. By this time next year, half of his executive team would be replaced with actually qualified professionals. "And how's your little consulting business, Olivia?" Madison called out, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Still working from that tiny office downtown?" "Oh, you know." I shrugged. "It pays the bills." "Barely, from what I hear," Tyler snickered. "Maybe if you'd stayed at Morrison Technologies, you'd be sitting at the grown-up table by now." My Aunt Catherine nodded sagely. "It's not too late to admit you made a mistake, dear. I'm sure James could find something entry-level for you. Maybe in the mailroom?" The entire adult table erupted in poorly concealed laughter. I remained quiet, thinking about the documents sitting in my office. The ones that would reveal that Sterling Enterprises, my company, now owned everything they were so proud of. "Actually," I said carefully, "I have some interesting meetings coming up about the future of my career." "Oh, honey." My mother patted my hand condescendingly. "Don't get your hopes up. Some people just aren't meant for big success." Just then my phone buzzed. A message from my CFO. "Everything's set for Monday's announcement. The papers are ready. Morrison Technologies is officially ours." I looked around the table at my smug relatives, James bragging about his business acumen, Madison showing off her expensive jewelry, Tyler boasting about his corner office. None of them had any idea that their comfortable world was about to be turned upside down. "More turkey, Olivia?" Aunt Catherine called out mockingly. "At least you can eat well at our table, even if you can't succeed like the rest of us." I smiled, thinking about Monday morning. "Thank you, Aunt Catherine. I think this Thanksgiving will be very memorable indeed." Tommy caught my eye and grinned. He knew what was coming. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with a side of corporate acquisition papers and a complete restructuring of the family business. The kids' table suddenly felt like the perfect place to watch it all unfold. Monday morning arrived with a crisp November chill. I stood in my private office at Sterling Enterprises, 40 floors above the city, watching the sunrise paint the skyline in shades of gold. In exactly 2 hours, my family's perfect world would shatter. Ms. Andrews? My assistant Sarah appeared at the door. Everyone from Morrison Technologies has arrived for the routine shareholders meeting. They're waiting in the main conference room. I smiled, adjusting my tailored suit. No more understated dresses today. And my family? Your Uncle James is complaining about having to come to Sterling Enterprises. He's saying it's beneath him to meet with, and I quote, some faceless corporation that probably doesn't understand our family values. Perfect. I checked my reflection in the window. Is everything ready? Sarah nodded, a slight smile playing at her lips. She'd been with me since the beginning, watching me build Sterling Enterprises while my family mocked my supposed failure. Security is in place. The papers are ready, and the cameras are set up to capture every reaction. Then let's not keep them waiting. The conference room was a sight to behold. Through the glass walls, I could see my family seated around the massive table, James at the head, naturally, with Madison and Tyler flanking him. My mother sat nearby, probably already planning how to brag about this meeting at her next social gathering. They have no idea you're coming, Sarah whispered. Your uncle's been demanding to meet with Mr. Sterling for the past hour. I straightened my shoulders. Well, let's not disappoint him. The room fell silent as I walked in, my heels clicking against the marble floor. For a moment, no one recognized me. They were too busy looking for the male CEO they'd expected. Then Madison's eyes widened. Olivia? What are you doing here? This is a private meeting. Is it? I moved to the head of the table, directly opposite Uncle James. I think you'll find I have every right to be here. Now see here, James began, his face reddening. We're here to meet with Sterling Enterprises CEO. Run along and play with your little consulting business. I sat down, placing a thick folder on the table. Oh, but Uncle James, I am Sterling Enterprises CEO. In fact, I own it. And as of 3 months ago, I own Morrison Technologies too. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the soft whir of the cameras capturing every shocked expression, every moment of dawning horror. That's impossible, Tyler stammered. Morrison Technologies is a family company. Yes, I agreed pleasantly. And it still is. Just not your family anymore. I opened the folder and began distributing documents. These papers confirmed Sterling Enterprises' acquisition of Morrison Technologies, completed 3 months ago through a series of shell corporations. You all signed off on it, though you were too busy congratulating yourselves to read the fine print. My mother's face had gone pale. But your consulting business was a cover, I smiled. While you were all mocking my tiny office downtown, I was building one of the largest corporate consulting firms in the country. The office you laughed at was just for show. Madison grabbed the papers with trembling hands. This can't be legal. Daddy, do something. James was frantically flipping through the documents, his face growing paler by the second. These are legitimate. We work for Olivia now. Not exactly. I leaned back in my chair. You see, I've been reviewing the company's performance, specifically the executive team's qualifications. It's interesting how many positions were filled based on family connections rather than merit. The color drained from Tyler's face. What are you saying? I'm saying that effective immediately, there will be some changes in management, starting with the executive team. I pressed a button, and the wall screen lit up with a new organizational chart. Madison gasped as she saw her name missing from the VP position she'd held for 3 years. "You can't do this," she whispered. "We're family." "Family?" I stood up slowly. "Was I family when you made me sit at the kids' table? When you mocked my career? When you treated me like a failure while I was building an empire?" James slammed his fist on the table. "This is revenge, plain and simple." "No, Uncle James. This is business. The same business you claimed I didn't understand." I started walking around the table. "Your executive team is underqualified. The company's performance has been declining for years. You've been coasting on the family name while more competent companies passed you by. And now," my mother asked quietly. "Now?" I stopped behind her chair. "Now Morrison Technologies will be run by people who earned their positions. Starting today, all executive positions will be reviewed. Those who are qualified may stay. Those who aren't," I glanced at Madison and Tyler, "will be offered positions more suited to their actual skills." "You demote your own family?" Madison's voice cracked. "You mean like how you demoted me to the kids' table? Treated me like a child playing at business?" I smiled. "Consider this a lesson in real corporate management." I nodded to Sarah, who began distributing another set of papers. "These are your new contracts. You have until the end of the day to decide if you want to stay with the company in your new positions. If not, severance packages are included. And if we refuse," James challenged, though his voice lacked its usual authority, "then you can leave now. But I should mention, non-compete clauses are in effect. And given that Sterling Enterprises owns most of the major consulting firms in the region, I let the implication hang in the air." The room was silent except for the sound of shuffling papers and muffled sobs from Madison. My mother sat frozen, probably calculating how this would affect her social standing. "Oh, and one more thing," I added, pausing at the door. "Next year's Thanksgiving dinner will be held at my house. I have plenty of room at the main table, for those who still have jobs to be thankful for." As I walked out, I heard Tyler's shaky voice. Did she just own us?" Sarah fell into step beside me as we headed back to my office. "That was quite something. Are you okay?" I looked down at my phone, where a text from young Tommy had just appeared. "Did you do it? Did you show them?" "I'm perfect," I replied to Sarah. "Sometimes the best seat in the house is at the kids' table. You get to watch all the grown-ups' mistakes without having to pretend they're successes." The real work was just beginning: restructuring Morrison Technologies, implementing proper management practices, turning it into the company it should have been all along. But for now, I savored the moment. After all, revenge doesn't always come with cranberry sauce. Sometimes it comes with corporate letterhead and a complete reorganization chart. The weeks following the revelation were exactly what I expected: a storm of desperate calls, manipulation attempts, and increasingly panicked family meetings. My phone buzzed constantly with messages. "Olivia, darling, we need to discuss this as a family." "Mom, you can't destroy your own family's legacy." "Uncle James, please, we can work something out." "Madison." I let them all go to voicemail while I focused on restructuring Morrison Technologies. The business news was having a field day. Morrison Technologies undergoes major management overhaul. FAMILY DRAMA leads to corporate shaky UP. Hidden CEO reveal IDEHITY. And derivative family confrontation. 1 month after the revelation, I sat in my office reviewing the latest performance reports when Sarah appeared at my door. "Your cousin Madison is here," she said. "No appointment, but she looks different." I glanced at the security feed. Madison stood in the lobby, but she wasn't the perfectly polished executive I remembered. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple business suit. Her usual arrogant expression was missing. Send her up, I decided. Madison walked into my office like a stranger, taking in the space with new eyes. "Nice view," she said quietly. "Better than my old office. Though I suppose that's not saying much anymore." "What do you want, Madison?" She sank into a visitor's chair. "I took the job. The junior analyst position you offered." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? I thought you said you'd rather die than start at the bottom." "I did." She laughed without humor. "Then I tried applying at other firms. Turns out when you remove the Morrison name and connection, my resume is lacking." "Shocking." "I deserve that," she admitted. "I deserve all of this. She hesitated. "I want to learn. Actually learn, not just coast by on the family name." I studied her carefully. "Why should I believe you?" "Because you were right." Her voice cracked slightly. "About everything. About earning our positions. About real business skills. I've been reading the company reports since you took over. Our performance has improved more in 1 month than in the last 3 years under Dad. Speaking of Uncle James," I leaned back in my chair. "How is he handling early retirement?" Madison grimaced. "Not well. He's drinking a lot, talking about family betrayal. Mom's social circle is in shambles. Turns out people aren't so impressed by our name anymore." "And Tyler?" "Took the severance package. Said he'd rather start fresh somewhere else than work his way up here." She paused. "He's having trouble finding anything above entry level." I nodded, unsurprised. "That's what happens when your only qualification is your last name." "I know that now." Madison looked down at her hands. "I'd been thinking about Thanksgiving. About all the times we made you sit at the kids' table, treated you like you were beneath us. We were so busy looking down on you that we didn't see you rising above us." Just then, my office door burst open. Uncle James stumbled in, ignoring Sarah's protests. The smell of expensive scotch wafted in with him. "You," he slurred, pointing at me. "You destroyed everything." "No, Uncle James." I remained seated, watching him sway. "You destroyed everything. Years of nepotism, of prioritizing family connections over competence. I just exposed it." "We're blood," he shouted. "That used to mean something. It still does." I stood up slowly. "But blood doesn't qualify you to run a company. Skill does. Experience does. Actually knowing what you're doing does." "James." My mother's voice cut through as she rushed in after him. "Stop making a scene." I almost laughed at her instinctive concern for appearances. "Still worried about the family image, Mom. Even now." She deflated slightly, looking suddenly older. "Everything's changed, Olivia. The country club, our social circle, even our neighbors look at us differently now." "Because they're seeing you clearly for the first time," I said quietly. "Just like you're finally seeing me." Madison stood up. "Dad, you're embarrassing yourself. This isn't helping anything." James turned on her. "You, working as a junior analyst, a Morrison, starting at the bottom." "Yes," she said firmly. Because that's where I should have started in the first place. Where we all should have started. I watched this exchange with interest. Maybe Madison really was starting to understand. Get him out of here, I told Sarah. And call him a car. He's in no condition to drive. After security escorted James out, my mother lingered. Was all this really necessary, Olivia? The takeover, the demotions, the public humiliation. Was it necessary to treat me like a failure for 10 years? I countered. To mock my career, belittle my choices, make me sit at the kids' table while you all congratulated yourselves on success you hadn't earned. She had no answer for that. The company is doing better now, I continued. Real executives in leadership positions. Actual qualifications required for promotion. If you don't believe me, check the quarterly reports. And the family? She asked quietly. That depends on you. All of you. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it because it was good business. What happens next is up to you. After they left, I stood at my window, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk fell. My phone buzzed with a message from Tommy. Hey, Aunt Olivia. Mom says I can come work at your office after school sometimes. She says I need to learn business the right way. Is that okay? I smiled, thinking about the next generation of the Morrison family. Maybe some good would come from all this after all. 1 year later, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner at my penthouse. The table settings were elegant, but not ostentatious. Success doesn't need to shout to be heard. Madison was there, having earned a promotion to senior analyst through actual hard work. Tommy came too, proud to show off what he'd learned during his after-school office visits. Even my mother attended, though she was quieter now, more thoughtful. Uncle James and Tyler didn't come. Some people can't accept change, can't admit their mistakes. But those who could, those who were willing to learn and grow, found their places at my table. You know what I'm thankful for? Madison said during dinner. Second chances. And learning what real success looks like. I raised my glass, thinking about how far we'd come. To real success, I toasted, and to earning your seat at the table. Tommy grinned at me from across the table. No kids' table this year, Aunt Olivia? No, I smiled back. Just one table. For people who understand that true worth isn't in your name or your connections. It's in what you build for yourself. And that, more than any corporate takeover or family drama, was the real victory. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in destroying what others built. It's in building something better yourself. The kids' table was gone, but its lesson remained. Sometimes those they look down on the most rise the highest. And sometimes the best view of success comes from starting at the bottom. As for the Morrison family legacy, it's stronger than ever, just not in the way they expected. And that's something to be truly thankful for.